Ramble. Welcome to episode 76 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. My name is Dan, and this is the bit I do at the start where I introduce my good buddy Phil. How's it going, Phil?
And I guess this is the bit where I say, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I mean, you wouldn't necessarily say you're good if you're not good, though, right, Phil? You wouldn't lie to us, would you?
I'm forced to say this, everyone. I'm trapped. Help me. Send help.
Could you imagine that, Phil, if this actually was a really kind of like, you know, tormenting series of podcasts where it turns out that I've just been holding you captive for the last 3 years?
It's a very abusive relationship. Joe managed to escape, but I'm still trapped here.
That'd be actually a really good thing to add to like the shows going forwards, is like these little moments where it's you sneaking in like messages for help or something in between.
It's the rustling
maybe
of the
look at
paint
adding
box
that.
will be Morse code.
That's how Joe got away. He established that kind of language and managed to escape. But there's some things that you can't escape, Phil, and that could potentially be the subject matter for today's episode. That being,
Well, we're going to be talking about Games Workshop releases, the current releases that have been out over the last week or so, and their prices, and whether we think they're a good deal or not.
Yeah, I was expecting you to lead with, you know, prices off the back of how I kind of set that up, but I mean, what you did was fine, I suppose.
I mean, you're the master now, so if you need me to go back and redo it, you know, swing that whip around and I'll be there.
It's all right, mate. It's all right. I'll just, I'll punish you with a reduction in rations. And,
No, Daddy, please don't.
No. It's becoming more and more real by the moment, much like our 5-star reviews.
Ooh.
Hang on a second, what is this? Some kind of review? A 5-star review? Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this Warhammer 5-star review.
First of all, in this 5-star review segment, thank you very much to everyone who obviously heard our pleas in prior episodes where we stated that we were approaching our penultimate 5-star review, or rather our final, as it were. We are now in a happy position where we have plenty of fresh new 5-star reviews that will probably keep us in this segment till at least the end of April, I reckon, Phil.
Well, you know, let's not discourage them. If you've got a 5-star review up in your noggin, put it down on not paper, but, you know, tap it in to the interwebs and send it over.
Put it out there in the world for all to see and to, nurture the algorithm. Help us, help you somehow. I don't know. I don't understand how that exchange works. You're definitely just helping us. I don't entirely understand how we give anything back.
Well, we do. We just do the show. That's what we give back.
No, that's what we give back. But we would do that anyway, wouldn't we?
Oh, of course. Even if no one listens.
Exactly. It's just an opportunity for us to exercise the demons. But yeah, obviously, thank you so much to everyone who has gone about giving us some 5-star reviews. And if you'd like to do so, as I say, this will probably last us till April or end of April. So if you'd like to hear us shouting you out around May time, now's the time to get involved. And breaking with tradition, 2 ways we're breaking with tradition today, Phil. Number 1, the review comes not from Apple Podcasts of any region. It does, in fact, come from our Facebook page where you can leave reviews. Not necessarily... They do amount of 5 stars, don't they, on Facebook, right?
I do not. I can't remember. It could be a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a 5-star review.
I can't remember now either. But this individual, breaking with tradition, has opened up the potential for calling out a 6-star review. So not content with the conventional 5 stars, much like how Spinal Tap would turn up their, amplifiers to 11. This individual, Dave McDowell, has said that we are 6-star worthy.
Wow.
I mean, do you feel like a 6-star worthy entity, Phil?
He set the bar high now. We've got to live up to it.
He has. I mean, fair play to those using more traditional means of leaving us reviews because they don't have the option to input a 6th star. But we like to imagine that those who could would. Wouldn't you think so, Phil?
Of course.
There you go. So this 6-star review in no way delegitimizes all of you who have given us 5-star reviews before, but it does suggest that maybe there's a little extra, potential love that could be given. Just saying. So Dave McDowell says, absolutely love the show, as is evident by 6 stars. Listen to every episode, mostly at work, whilst driving about. It's like having mates in the van, just talking 40k. Differently. Oh, right. Definitely. He obviously didn't mean to say differently, but that's what he put. The number one 40k podcast out there. That was my mistake, not his. I've learned a lot about how to best use different armies and styles and tactics. Plus, the mad rambling makes the show so much fun to listen to. Keep up the great work, guys. And then he makes some hand gestures, but mostly thumbs up. So there you go. Dave McDowell's 5-star, not 5-star review, 6-star review. Thank you very much, Dave McDowell. You're a lovely human being, and we appreciate your support. And to amplify that sentiment and statement is Phil to say more of the same.
Well, thank you very much. You've outdone yourself with a 6-star. You have definitely done a different review that normally people don't get to do. 6-star. Wow. You've nailed it. I'm quite surprised you've actually managed to learn anything from us, because I don't think we're imparting that much wisdom. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I don't know. I think weirdly, one of the things that I feel like a lot of people have expressed to me as they like about it is that we try to approach books and rules not necessarily so much from like the bleeding edge of competitive, although I like to try and throw in some more optimized options. I think it's more that we look at the broad remit of the books and actually talk about more of the broader ideas that are available within it and give people more of a broad flavor. Whereas I feel like a lot of more competitive podcasts like to just kind of drill down into the stuff that's good and why it's good. I do feel like we expand a bit more. We must do, because we talk for way longer than most of the other guys. Are we the longest 40k podcast out there?
In terms of length of time, quite likely. I mean, if there's any pretenders to the throne, come on knocking at our door and we'll have words.
I don't know if that's a prize anyone else would really want to win, is it?
No, not really.
Exactly.
Takes far too much time.
I'd gladly give it up. Although I do love, that's the problem, isn't it? Right? I had this conversation with someone before where it's like, I just like having a chance to catch up with my buddy and just chat about stuff. So yeah, it just sort of takes as long as it takes.
That's true.
But if you'd like to like Dave McDowell, give us a 5-star review via Facebook. We do have a Facebook page. It'll be linked down below in all of our, stuff that says stuff about us. We're relatively active on there. We mostly just post that we've put up a new video, but we do also ask people to offer their feedback and comment on subjects that we're going to talk about during the show. And we're also actually bizarrely active on the messenger side of things, right? Like I often find myself in long, drawn-out conversations with people who engage with us on Facebook, which is always nice. I actually managed to sell some Sisters of Battle to one of our listeners today, Phil.
Did you?
Yeah, it was quite random. He was telling me about his Sisters and Death Watch collection, aspirations and armies, and he was saying how he wanted certain units that I already own that I don't want anymore. And we need to resolve some of the specifics because there's a whole PayPal situation. Plus, I think he's trying to pretend that he's not buying these so as he doesn't get in trouble with the missus. But anyway, bar that, anything can happen in the realms of Facebook, right, Phil?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think you tend to deal with the Facebook, Messenger. I tend to be quite chatty on the old Instagram with people if they're going to drop us a message over there. So, pick your favorite one of us and reach out to us via the preferred method that we use. Noting that if we actually suddenly got an influx of messages, I wouldn't be able to respond. It's only because it's so rare that someone reaches out to us that I actually bother to respond,
Oh, that's fair enough. Anyway, shall we get on with the show, Phil?
Well, I was going to actually make one last point because,
Please.
we had got to the end of our 5-star reviews. Quite a few people who had already done a 5-star review were like, I really want to do a second 5-star review, but I can't. So a couple of people have messaged us. A couple of people were like, oh, you can go back to, not 5 years ago, 2 years ago, find my really early 5-star review before the days we were doing 5-star reviews. I'm talking about Toke here. Poor Toke did a very early. He's too early to the punch. But my point is, if you've already done a 5-star review and you want to help us out, and you can't leave another 5-star review, what you can do is share the podcast with your mates and your friends. Force them to listen to it, like I'm forced by Dan to do this damn podcast. Thank you very much.
We definitely got more desperate with our pleads for our call to actions there took on a whole new level, Phil.
No, I know. I'm desperate. I just need to escape.
Desperate. Exactly. Please let me be free. Anyway, transitional noise. Woo! This is the bulk of the content for this week, and that is obviously us talking about prices, releases, and all the general feels that are going around the ether as we seek to understand what the heck is going on, Phil.
I know. What is going on?
It is a question, isn't it? I think one of the things that's always really interesting to me, and I'm going to lay out a bit of my kind of stall before we get into our specific opinions on this, is and at the risk of sounding like the worst kind of GW shill or apologist, as a player of 40k, as a fan of Games Workshop, as a long-standing supporter of this hobby, I've kind of long since accepted that stuff is expensive. And I've also noted over the years that trying to understand or associate any kind of grand strategy to what Games Workshop does is quite a futile exercise, because as a business, they have a history of making very odd decisions at various points in time. However, never before, and again, I might be being a little bit extreme when I say this, but never before have I seen them make such a series of bad decisions and blunders in such rapid succession, at least since the changes that occurred around 2015, where they started becoming more community focused. I mean, does that feel, as a kind of cover letter, Phil, as a fair broad statement for what has happened over the last few weeks with G-Dubs?
Yeah, I presume, just for people wondering what we're on about, I presume you're talking about the release of the Honored of the Chapter, the Necron Royal Corps, the Kill Team Kill Zones, and potentially even the Kill Team Prior Nexus itself. All those sorts of releases have had, I don't know, I think most people have been kind of quibbling about the price and the value of those boxes. And I think, as you said, for the last few years, everything has been reasonably good value. There's been lots of easy build kits, so there's been sort of cheaper variants of it. And literally in the space of like a week, there's a bunch of releases that all seem a bit too expensive for what they are, or there's less value in them from the previous version of them when it comes to things like the Kill Team Kill Zones.
Yeah, and not only is it a pricing issue, it's also a bit of a communications issue as well, right? I mean, they have been doing some interesting things via Warhammer Community, and again, some little ripples started with that years ago. Most notably, I think one of the first kind of initial times where we saw that problems could occur within Games Workshop's kind of community website is when they communicated around the Black Legion character, who famously was supposedly able to give buffs to raptors of all, colours and creeds.
Harken World Claimer.
That's him.
With the Vigilus release.
Yeah, so he famously had some advertised rules that subsequently were, not represented within the actual publications that GW brought to market. and then Games Workshop later redacted and essentially changed that so as to ensure that the model in game represented what they had essentially told people prior to its release. So yeah, I mean, accepting that there's a lot of things to get into, myself and Phil haven't really kind of approached this with any kind of specific structure or agenda. We're just going to kind of talk through the things as they come to mind and try to address them. But I think, if I can be so bold, Phil, I think the initial beginnings of the strange pricing anomalies around Indomitus bizarrely began with the Necron Warrior box of 2020, right? That was like the first real example of strange goings on with the pricing associated with kits that were established as being part of Indomitus. Does that sound fair?
Well, I don't know what you're on about. So can you give me some context? Is it because it's a basic warrior kit, but is quite expensive for the number of models in there in comparison to the old box?
So in terms of some of the little kind of finessing parts of the Necron Warrior kit, so Games Workshop, as of a few months ago, finally updated the Necron Warriors box set, and it was updated to contain the identical miniatures, or at least as far as I can see and as far as I am aware, identical miniatures from the ones supplied via Indomitus. So effectively, to give us a degree of synergy across the range, the old Necron Warriors with their little green plastic rods were taken off sale, and they were replaced by this new Necron Warrior box set, which retailed in the UK at least for £29.99. Not 99. I just added that out of weird reflex. It's just 29 quid.
Yeah,
it's weird, isn't it? How you sort of do that with UK pricing structures, right, Phil?
Yeah, you just assume that's always there.
Yeah, it's always got to have a 99 there, which apparently is something to do with like taxes and how that works. But anyway, look, I digress. The point is this box set was released for £29. Was going to do it again for £29, a measly £3.50 less than the Warhammer 40,000 Recruit Edition, which features all of the contents of the Necron Warriors box, plus 5 Assault Intercessors, a Lieutenant with Storm Shield and Plasma Gun, or Volkite thing, and whatever the Lieutenant is called for the Necrons. So, plus some dice, plus some cardboard, plus some, books and things. So for £3.50 more than this box of Necron Warriors, you could get the Necron Warriors plus extras. And this started to raise a lot of weird eyebrows because people are like, why have you done this? It's the exact same kit for very little less than what I can get if I buy it with a bunch of extra Marines and a character Necron. So that was really where the weirdness began with these Indomitus releases and pricing inconsistencies, I suppose.
Yeah. I think,
does that make sense now, Phil?
Yeah, no, it does. I also think, one of the conclusions of this already is the Indomitus box and the subsequent sort of spin-offs like the Recruit Edition, they're just such good value. They make everything else just seem crazy expensive in comparison, even though, as you said, 30 quid for a box of Necrons pretty standard. But then when there's a box that's only a few quid more with that plus a bunch of other stuff, it sort of pays to shop around the Games Workshop website to see where these savings and bundles are. Quite often, though, with the Indomitus box, for example, it's sold out straight away. So there was no other way of getting these models at such a cool discount, although they did do a sort of second wave of it. And even up until recently, you could still get them and potentially still could get them even now from like third-party retailers. But I think most of those are sort of disappearing pretty fast.
And I suppose what's interesting about this Necron Warriors box and others like it is, one, is this now the Necron Warriors box that will remain so until subsequent updates years in the future? is this a holdover while we wait for a full multi-part Necron Warrior kit, or some other variable thereof? And these are the things that are always interesting at the moment, like Games Workshop, because of the inconsistencies of like how it approaches this stuff. It's like sometimes, certainly in like the older versions of 40k, 8th edition specifically, they went, hey, here you go, guys, here's a multi-part Redemptor Dreadnought, but also here's an easy build Redemptor Dreadnought. And it was like, oh, okay, options, which was cool, but it created this weird inconsistency in terms of what they're doing when, which is where a lot of my confusion comes from with this, because all of a sudden I'm looking at all this stuff going, right, okay, cool. These Necron Warriors, they're priced a little less than what it cost me to get a bunch of extra stuff. But I don't know what the state of play is with those. And by extension, the same scenario played out with the Outrider kit, because the Outrider kit was kind of the next step in these Indomitus models being released as standalone box sets. Now, the Outrider squad is £36.50. And, you know, a perfectly reasonable price for 3 rather chunky bikes. But again, given the fact that within Marines, the Eradicators and the Blade Guard and the Assault Intercessors all got fresh, new, lovely multi-part plastic kits, are these a stopgap until we get to that place? Or is this forevermore what the Outrider kit will be? And again, these are the sorts of questions. Bizarrely, I don't feel like the Outriders got nearly as much of a hard time when they came out of £36.50 as some of the other contents of the Indomitus box being released separately. Now, admittedly, that content is more expensive, but there's some weird established kind of thinking around this, that when you see these guys at what is essentially, £12 a model, it doesn't feel too ridiculous. But then when you see that later on for other things, it starts to feel a little bit sillier. But I don't know. I mean, what was your vibe when the Outriders came along? Were you relatively happy with that, or did you not really think about it?
Well, one, I'm not a huge fan of them. I think they're cool. I think they look great. I just don't think they fit in with the style of the army that I want. So I've still got my Outriders from Indomitus in a box, and I'm sort of sitting on them. And it's like, maybe I'll use them one day, maybe I won't. I think the pricing seems okay, but you are right in terms of they're not a multi-part kit. So if you want lots of them, I mean, you can have a maximum of. You can't take them in squads of 6, can you?
No, you can only take them in squads of 3 unless you take them as Death Watch, in which case you can take them as 5-man squads.
So normally the max you can take is 9, and 3 of them out of the box as they come. I guess you could maybe do some head swaps and arm poses or arm swaps. I'm not too sure.
Arm swaps aren't easy.
Yeah, I think it's a debate about whether, it's like multi-pose versus mono-pose. It's like you can do some cool conversions with them, but you've kind of got to glue them all together and then start chopping away at the arms and bits and swapping them out with other spares from other kits to make that work. And if you're comfortable with that, then great. Otherwise, you're stuck with 3 models that are identical if you're buying them 3 times to get your maximum of 9 models. So yeah, I don't know. They seem okay priced. I think that I think there's been a precedent set with bikes. They're kind of expensive models, so I think people are okay with them. And I think also, to an extent, I think rules do play a part of it in terms of Outriders seen as really good, so people want them, so therefore they're just going to buy them. And I do know people that just bought multiples of the Indomitus box just to get lots of Outriders, just because it's a bargain when that first came out.
It's also worth saying as well, though, that the Outriders themselves they essentially come on 2 sprues. You've got the one smaller sprue and the one larger sprue, so it sort of doesn't feel quite as egregious as some upcoming examples that listeners will almost certainly be somewhat aware of, but we'll explain them when we get to them. And I think that's the thing. It's like the Indomitus box represented such an incredible deal that all this kind of future breaking down of its contents has been a really interesting kind of exercise for Games Workshop, and something that, if I'm honest, I think they've done a very poor job of communicating with us as consumers, because I think we have been given the opportunity to focus on some of the negative aspects of it. But also, I think, people who are understandably unhappy about some of these pricing decisions are justified in that. And I guess we'll address that as we sort of get to them. But to give the context of Indomitus and the changes that came along, first it was Necron Warriors, then it was Outriders, and then we saw our kind of first early seeds of change, as it were, because famously after what was the last one called? Dark Imperium, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So famously, there were some models from Dark Imperium that were only available via the Dark Imperium box set. Well, in fact, it was only really one miniature in particular that wasn't available by any other means.
Yeah,
and that
Ancient.
was the Primaris Ancient. And the Primaris Ancient ended up getting bundled up with 2 lieutenants and 5 intercessors for £45. And I remember when this happened, not that I have to think that far back, but when this happened, a month or so ago, people were unhappy at the £45 price point for this because they could remember being able to buy Dark Imperium for like 80, 90, £100, whatever it may be. And seeing this kind of reduced content for £45, I think really shocked a lot of people when it kind of came to market.
Well, so also that's one sprue, and I bought that sprue from Warhammer Conquest magazine for £8. I bought 2 of them, in fact, because I was like, I want some ancients and I want some options to convert them up. So I was like, I got 2 of them, and that's not a lot of money for what it now retails at in comparison. It's like it's a bit insane. So I think because the price point of the Conquest magazine was so low, because it was such a good bargain, £45 is quite reasonable. But in comparison to the saving that you get, it just seems astronomically expensive.
And I suppose that's always where it comes into effect, right? Because these starter boxes are obviously intended to be loss leaders. Not that Games Workshop makes a loss on them either, right? Let's not be under any kind of illusions that they're not making money off of every one of those Indomitus boxes they sold. But the fact is that they are better value propositions to, get people into the hobby, but also, reward their, established player base, and also kind of kickstart an edition. Back in the olden days when all they would do was give you the option to buy a book, a lot of people might just buy the book, but maybe the adoption of the new rule system had a longer migration period. Maybe in older times when a new edition came in, because of the way it was distributed early doors, maybe it took a great deal more time for people to try out those new rules. Whereas if you're selling it to people via a really kind of like must-have item, which includes a rule book, maybe you're more compelled to pick it up, and as a result, you're more likely to want to start trying out the new system because you got the rules. I mean, what do you think about that, Phil?
Because I never got it. Did Dark Imperium come with a rule book? Or
yes.
Was it? Oh, okay. So it did.
Yeah, full hardback rule book.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that there's options for both. I think 8th edition was super popular, so lots of new people got into it probably midway through 8th edition because they got their mates into it, for example. So I think there's a sort of slow burn of 8th edition. It's like by the time I was looking at getting into Marines, Dark Imperium just wasn't available anymore. So, but then Conquest came along, so I was like, oh, cool. I'll just pick the bits up I need via that, which was a reasonably good saving. I think in hindsight, it would have still been cheaper to have bought Dark Imperium, offloaded the Death Guard portion somehow, which isn't always necessarily easy because it's always the way of the Marine section is the popular part, and then trying to get rid of the other half is more difficult. So, for example, Necrons go super cheap on eBay because people are trying to get rid of their half of Indomitus, for example. So if you're a Necron player, like it's a field day, it's like happy days. Whereas a Primaris player, it's a bit more difficult, I think, trying to get those bargains.
I mean, there's definitely an argument that if you're looking to start 40k or looking to get into a new edition of 40k, look at what the thing is that the Marines are fighting against in the main box set and adopt that as your starter army, because you'll probably get the best value from that in terms of pennies spent for minis.
Well, I imagine if you bought Indomitus, kept the Necrons, you could sell the Marines at a profit.
I would assume so, yeah.
But normally everyone does it the other way around, and at most you might break even with the selling the Necrons, or like have paid 20 or 30 quid or something.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? But yeah, so this box set, these heroes of the Imperium, heroes of the chapter, came along, created a little bit of a sort of hubbub, but I think for the most part, it wasn't so egregious that everyone kind of got super up in arms about it, because ultimately, you got yourself 8 miniatures, 3 of which were characters, which we've now established should retail somewhere between £20 and £25, which in my opinion is an absurd amount of money for one miniature, irrespective of what they do in game. But that is a price point that we have as a community kind of comfortably accepted now, I suppose. So based on the idea that each of those characters there would be 20 quid each, you got yourself, £60 worth of characters for 45 quid, and then throw in 5 intercessors, call that another £20 between friends. And you got a tidy £80 worth of models for only £45. So could potentially be seen as a value proposition. But I understand why people weren't thrilled to bits by that offer.
Yeah, I think the Conquest magazine probably dampened people's opinions on that one more than anything else. I think a lot of people were like, brilliant that Ancient is finally out, so that's good, because people have been waiting like a couple of years, I guess, to get their hands on that, because Conquest magazine is great, but it's not available in most countries. It's like UK and a handful of other countries where it slowly got rolled out to, and like America never got it. So there's a lot of countries where these cool offers just aren't available to them. And I guess another point to quickly make here is, because quite often we talk about third-party shops because they sell at a discount. A lot of countries don't have that option either. They've got to buy direct from Games Workshop at full whack. And even then, some of these, for example, the ones we're talking about, with these kind of sprue releases, they're all exclusive to Games Workshop website as well. So even in the UK, you can't get a discount on it, because normally if you go, it's 45 quid, you could probably buy it for 30 something elsewhere, which isn't so bad. But then when you do have to pay full price, you're like, ooh, yeah, it's a bit pricey.
It is a sting in the tail, isn't it? And I mean, I think that's the thing. Conquest did obviously skew people's expectations around the price point of these. Personally, and again, noting that I do acknowledge it is expensive, it is at least now an ever available, or at least available for the foreseeable, option that gamers have access to should they want to add. Should they want to add a Primaris Ancient into their force without wanting to have to go to eBay and set up accounts if they don't already have them, and trying to find one that way. So if you want a Primaris Ancient, you now at least have the option to obtain one. But I acknowledge that is an expensive price point for one miniature. But you can always find a use for 5 intercessors. You can always find a use for a lieutenant. So, and if nothing else, those lieutenant miniatures are actually really good kind of base miniatures for conversion options, wouldn't you say so, Phil?
Yeah, I converted one of mine to have its power sword like slung over his shoulder, a bit like the Judicar. So yeah, I've used mine and converted them up, and I actually think those 2 lieutenants are fantastic, like little kits. I think there's a question to be said about, they are characters, so they're priced more expensive. But Space Marine characters aren't very detailed. They're kind of quite bog standard minis. They're good, but kind of bog standard. So when you go, one model's 22 quid. You're like, geez, like, that's quite a lot. In comparison, for 22 quid for a different race, you might get something that's highly detailed or ornate or just really big and chunky.
Yeah, I mean, and that is always one of the funny things about Games Workshop pricing, right? Is how obviously the more popular ranges can feature more hefty price points, but also the level of kind of like components or materials used to construct the figure are rarely considered. Historically, I always sort of felt like this was indicative of the fact that, or, you know, a result of the fact that we sell less captains than we sell tactical marines. Therefore, they are less likely to shift. Therefore, we need to sell them for more money in order to, you know, offset the fact that they don't move as quickly off the shelf. So I sort of got it back in the day, but now it's sort of a bit, I don't know. It's strange to assume why that is, but I mean, equally, I suppose the same logic can apply. It's just an interesting rationale for why stuff costs more than other things. And in the case of Space Marines, and we'll get to the Necrons in a moment, but in the case of Space Marines, none of this feels more true than the latest Space Marine Indomitus breakup, which is Space Marines Honored of the Chapter, which, if you haven't heard, is quite a few pennies for not so many miniatures. I mean, what are we talking here, Phil?
Well, it's 89 quid. You get, within that, you get free Blade Guard veterans. You get free Eradicators. You get your Chaplain, your Blade Guard Ancient, and the Judicar as well. So 3 of them are characters, and then 2 of them are free squads. Sorry, 2 squads are free.
Mm. And, I mean, to be fair as well, 2 of those characters are 100% exclusive to Honored of the Chapter. You can't presently get a Judicar or a Blade Guard Ancient via any other means that I'm aware of, other than obviously owning the Indomitus box or purchasing them separately over eBay. And the Primaris Chaplain is an exclusive sculpt to the Indomitus, or rather now Honored of the Chapter set. But by extension, you can still acquire, Primaris Chaplains. There are generic Primaris Chaplains, or rather the established Primaris Chaplain sculpt that exists. I'm not sure necessarily which one I like better these days. There are times where I feel like the old Primaris Chaplain is pretty cool, but then I feel like the kind of pose of the new one is a little better.
Hands down the new one for me.
I just don't like the weird Terminator head, i.e. Terminator, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, not the Space Marine armor.
Yeah, no, I would totally, just in terms of theming of my army, I'm sure I've mentioned it enough times, all my guys have helmets, so I will take the old Chaplain and just sort of do a head swap with this guy, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I did. And again, I felt like he was chaplainly enough that I didn't need to find some skull mask for him. I just put a normal Primaris helmet on him and went, that'll do.
Ooh.
Well, he was, he's chaplain enough without, without adding some kind of skull mask. Because finding skull masks is really hard to come by,
No, that's true. Yeah.
Good ones, anyway. There's only like a handful of good ones out there. And the weird thing is most of the good ones have hoods over their heads. So adding the hood element is always...
Yeah, or the Reavers, I guess, is another option.
I don't like the Reaver ones in terms of putting them on chaplains. I think they're just a bit... Yeah. I mean, in the end, I did consider putting like a Blood Angel, one of the Blood Angel Forge World helmets on, but I was like, nah, I want him to be a bit more generic. But anyway, we digress. A model that I absolutely love, I think I actually went so far as to say it was my favorite miniature of the Indomitus box set, is the Blade Guard Ancient. I think it's an absolutely fantastic mini. I think, again, I'm not entirely sure why it's carrying around the severed hand of a Necron. I mean, this is the kind of weird sort of modern day trophy gathering that I don't entirely get on board with when it comes to Primaris Marine range. Much like the gentleman scrubbing his power sword clean with some kind of chaos icon. These are one of those strange moments where I don't understand why they would be doing this, unless, of course, it's Games Workshop leaving subtle hints that Primaris Marines are actually evil.
I thought it's... I don't think it's a Necron hand. I think it's just bones. I think it's a relic. And it's meant to be
He's carrying around his bony hand.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But, yeah, look, I mean, in terms of a selection of miniatures, they're all really nice. But they are retailing this for £89, which is quite a bit when you consider that the multi-part plastic kits for the Eradicators and the Bladeguard Veterans come in at £31.50, and that's with the option to do all manner of different poses and obviously model them and obviously giving you greater degrees of customization and weapon options as well. You can do a lot more kind of, squad customization with the Bladeguard and the Eradicators. You can give the Eradicators the heavy Eradicator assault rifle gun variant thingy. Plus you can also give them multi-melters. And in the case of the Bladeguard Veterans, you can model the shields mounted on their backs. You can arm them with Volkite guns. So there's a lot more flexibility there than the monopose, easy build versions that are available in Honored of the Chapter. I suspect why the price of Honored of the Chapter is so great is because if it was less than that, you might, as a consumer, be disenfranchised from buying Eradicators and Bladeguard Veterans, because you might be like, well, I want Bladeguard Veterans and Eradicators. I'll just get the £60 Honour of the Chapter, and then I get free characters thrown in for free. Yay! I guess that's one of the things they kind of wanted to try and avoid, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is quite expensive given how much this was when it was entombed within an Indomitus box, right?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's like you should be praising them for releasing this so soon. It's like we didn't have to wait 2 years for this to come out to get a chapter, an ancient, Bladeguard Ancient, and the Judicaire model, which, for example, might just be exclusive to this one sprue. And I think that's another point to say is this all comes on one sprue. It's a big sprue, but it's just one sprue. And I think a lot of people get a bit hung up on that. If this had come out in 2 years' time and it was maybe 60 quid, people would still be like, oh god, that's expensive. And maybe Games Workshop wouldn't care as much because the majority of people that are going to buy Bladeguard and Eradicators will be doing it over the next year to supplement their existing Space Marine armies. Obviously, you've got an issue of new players coming into it down the line where, yeah, I think you're right. They've priced it at a point where they're making sure you're not just buying this as an easy bundle deal to get Eradicators and Bladeguard. It's really you're buying the free characters because you really need them or want them, and yeah, you get these extra guys bundled in. It's a bit odd because you sort of know that Games Workshop should know that they're going to split these kits out afterwards to make them for sale. Although, so if we talk about the Sisters of Battle special box set that came out over a year ago, like none of those models saw the light of day ever since until coming up in the future, which we'll talk about later. And maybe they thought they were going to do that with some of these, but maybe something changed their mind, because it just seems crazy that they would make this all one sprue. I guess from a manufacturing point of view, to keep costs down of Indomitus box, it makes more sense to have this on one sprue than to split it across 5 sprues, which is what it would be if you were to split it down. And the ironic thing is, if they had made these on 5 sprues, and then at this point in time, they had sold them all at their sort of standard price. So each character's 20 quid. The Eradicators are classed as easy build, so maybe they're 25 quid. Same with the Bladeguard, so they're cheaper. That all adds up to way more than 89 quid. But no one would quibble about that whatsoever, because they're like, I just want to buy this one easy build Bladeguard. I'll do that for 25 quid. I want to buy the Chaplain. I'll buy him. I don't have to buy the others. So you're spending less money, but actually you're getting a worse saving. And I think people would have been fine with that.
Oh, I agree. Well, we sort of saw it exhibited with the Outriders, which was something that I kind of felt like it was worth starting with. But we definitely saw it exhibited with the contents of Shadow Sword back in
Shadow Spear.
Shadow Spear. Sorry, not Shadow Sword. Shadow Sword is the
big tank.
The big tank, because the Primaris Librarian in Phobos Armor and the Captain in Phobos Armor were both broken out and sold separately. I think the Captain goes for £22.50, and I think the Librarian is just an even 20. But, you know, those two characters were broken out of that box set, which, if I remember correctly, was very reasonably priced when it first released. And then what's sort of doubly interesting is that Games Workshop have since then gone on to sell the contents of Shadow Spear as a start collecting box for the Space Marine range, or at least they sort of started off that way. Yeah. So start collecting Vanguard Space Marines, I've just found it here, is £60, and for £60 you get a squad of 10 infiltrators, 3 eliminators, 3 suppressors, which can only be purchased via this Vanguard Space Marines box, and the lieutenant in Phobos Armor with all of the different combat knives, who can also only be purchased via this box set. So that was £60. Throw in the 2 characters as separate things. So £60 plus, say, £40 for the 2 characters. That's £100 just for the Space Marine component of what was, if I remember correctly, £100 box set, right?
Yeah, I think it was around about that price.
It could have even been less. It could have been like 80, 85, right?
I think it would have only been that at a third-party retailer.
Well, potentially. But even then, right, so Games Workshop have precedent, right? They have illustrated to us prior to this that this is something that they have done. And to be fair, not to suggest that, you know, again, I'm kind of dubious to say they got away with it, but they had gotten away with it, right? I mean, there's very few other ways that I can kind of summarize that whole thing. They have, prior to these releases, they had gotten away with breaking down the content of box sets and selling it for more than what they did in its original form.
Well,
and people were perfectly content.
I think people understand that's the business model. Like the bundle deal box sets, like Shadow Spear or Indomitus, they're bundle savings. They're not the standard price point. So people lap these up because they're just such good value for money. Like with the Honored of a Chapter, yeah, it's really expensive. This current point in time, does it really actually bother anyone? Because pretty much everyone owns these models. There was a second wave of Indomitus, and it was quite rightly pointed out that when this went on sale, Indomitus was still available at a lot of third-party retailers like Element Games. And I checked yesterday, and Element Games have now sold out of it. So even though they were selling Indomitus at 125, which is like not the discounted price, I think, or it was slightly discounted, but not the full percentage that they would normally do. It was still the best way of getting this bundle deal. So I think now that's been snatched up. So yeah, it's a tough break though for people getting into the hobby now, or people that are in the hobby that are moving over to Space Marines and they want these things and can't get them because they missed out on the Indomitus box. So it's like, I feel for those people. Maybe down the line you'll see a different sculpt for a Blade Guard Ancient or Judicaire, because they're sort of the only 2 you might really care about unless you want that specific chaplain model. Like I said, if you want Blade Guard of Eradicators, you've either already got them in the Indomitus box set, and people like me that have that Indomitus box set will then go out and get the multi-part kit. It depends. Like for me, I'd rather the multi-part kit for all the extra bits and the variations and the weapon options, even though it's more expensive. It's like I'm happy to do that for my second squad, because actually having 2 lots of the exact same mono pose mini is a bit of a pain to convert to make them look different, and for me that's something I would always do. So yeah, I'm happy to get those extra models. There are some people though that just want like 9 Eradicators and they buy all of the Indomitus box set version, or they buy this because they're like, this is the cheaper way of getting those models. Like you could still, if you just say, for example, wanted Eradicators, you could buy the Honored of a Chapter, sell all the rest on eBay at, say, like 15 quid a character, 20 quid probably for the blade guard. You can make your money back or make a lot of it back, but it's just a lot of effort and time to do all of those kind of splitting down and selling. Like, you could even look at this, and this is something, it's like, the Indomitus box is the best saving possible. You split each of those models out onto their sprues to make it, you can sell them for more, right? And that's not just Games Workshop, that's anyone. Like, people do it on eBay all the time who just were scalping like Indomitus when it first came out. You can split those out even more. It's like, if you can sell a backpack for £1 on eBay or a sword for 250. It's like, if you can break the whole models down to so small and sell each component individually, that you'd make so much more money that way. But that's just such a lot of effort and time to photograph and stock keep all of those individual bits. That's why there are bit sellers, but they're so few and far between because it's just a lot of effort. But that is ultimately the most profitable way of buying and selling Games Workshop models. Buy a bundle deal box set, sell each individual bit component at £1 or £2 each.
I mean, that is, food for thought, Phil, as I start to clear out the cupboards. But I know. But I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. The idea of that just seems bewildering. But yeah, I know, I totally agree with what you were saying there, mate. And I think, ultimately, in summary for me with a lot of this sort of stuff, I think sometimes I like what Games Workshop is doing, and a lot of the time I buy the stuff that Games Workshop is selling, and sometimes I'm just not bothered, and sometimes I'm not interested, and sometimes I don't get it. And I think my approach to this has always been that I respect and understand what this is, and it is ultimately a luxury good, a hobby product, an unessential item, and as a result, I don't have an issue with Games Workshop setting the prices as they want. And as a consumer, I have the right to buy or not buy whatever it is that I feel is giving me value or giving me a service that I feel like I'm deriving value from. And I don't feel like the Honored of the Chapter is something that delivers me the value that I need because I was lucky enough to get in there early. But I can't say in all seriousness that there wouldn't come a time down the line where, as a player collector, if I really needed some of the contents of that box, that I wouldn't buy it if I needed it for some reason, like I really wanted it or whatever. These things always come around. The Royal Court for the Necrons, by extension, though, feels like a much lesser deal, more just because the contents of it is stuff that no one really wants. So it's difficult. And again, I appreciate that's a broad statement, but the contents of the Royal Court is one of those things where it's like, it's mostly stuff that Necron players are just not that interested in. The Cryptek Lord isn't anything to write home about. The Reanimator is broadly agreed upon as being pretty underwhelming. And that specific flavor of Cryptek is also one of the lesser ones. And the two little thralls that follow him around, again, it's not. I think that's the thing. The Necron Royal Court selection is probably the most unimpressive element, especially at 68 quid. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you reckon if Games Workshop were breaking down, a Cryptek Lord on its own, would it be what, like £25 or something? I guess.
Possibly.
Noting that the Hexmark Destroyer, who looks relatively similar to a Cryptek Lord, again, I haven't seen a size comparison, but the Hexmark Destroyer is £21, and he's got 3 legs and looks pretty bulky.
So it's the Scorpek Lord. I reckon he'd be...
What was I saying? Was I saying Cryptek Lord?
Yeah, so he's sort of similar
between...
Lord. So Illuminar Caesarez is 30 quid, and the Hexmark Destroyer is 21, and he's sort of somewhere in between the two.
Is it only £30 for Illuminators?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That's a great mini for 30 quid.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of a bit like what I was saying earlier. 20 odd quid for a Primaris Lieutenant lieutenant, should I say, and then 10 quid extra, and you get an amazingly detailed, crazy, much larger model. But then that's the way it goes. Like with the prices, it's all a bit arbitrary and pin the tail on the donkey. Sometimes it seems. I can see your point about this one. It's less money, but you get a lot less models. I think the argument here is one of them is a vehicle, and the destroyer variant, which is I guess the multi-part version, is 2650 on his own. Yeah, it's just an odd mishmash of things.
The Doomstalker, though, the Destroyer variant, as you called it, is a great deal bigger than the Reanimator, though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's taller than the Reanimator. It's quite a lot more model for £26.50. I think that's one of the funny things about the Necro Raw Court is like, on the assertion that the Cryptex are about £20, that the Lord is about £20, and the big dude, a bigger version of it, is £26, right? So at that point, you're like, well, that's £66, even if you assume that this guy should be priced the same as the big guy. But I wouldn't. I'd say he's probably should be maybe just flat 20. So you go 20, 20, 20. It's like, well, there's 60 quid. And now I'm paying £4 each for the two little bucket robots.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's
definitely that's not value, is it?
No.
Yeah.
I guess it's that thing of also if you're on Necron player and you do want these, there's probably billions of them on eBay sort of being and sold down, and you could probably buy them cheaper. And I think that's the same, like even with the Honored of Chapter 1, it's like you can buy each of those characters for about 10-15 quid. Push if you get in at the right auction, or you find a listing that's a bit cheap. It's like they're worth 20 quid for Games Workshop when they sell them on their website. They're being sold for a lot less elsewhere. So, and same with these. If you do need them, just shop around and you'll probably get them elsewhere.
But yeah, so I think when it comes to the broad pricing conversation and what they're putting out there, and there's a few other examples that we can kind of get into, I guess, but when it comes to the price points, I guess, for me, Games Workshop can charge you as much as they want to charge you. It's up to you whether you want to pay. Noting that I myself am very keenly against the idea of going to not third parties, rather, I strongly support the idea of going to third-party retailers like Element Games or Wayland or anyone that you want to in that regard. But in terms of like recasting and that kind of stuff, like I'm dead against the idea of using recasts or 3D printing or any of that stuff, because I just think when it comes to intellectual property and what these guys are creating, I always want to support the hobby and put money into it because I love the hobby and I want to keep it going. But I'm definitely not going to just support every decision they ever make. I'm not going to sit here and buy everything because, one, that's really, really futile. But two, it's just, I don't think that's a sensible way to kind of, to communicate to get Games Workshop. We're talking about James Workshop again. What you think is good and what you think is bad. And I think this is the thing. You don't have to like everything that Games Workshop does, and you don't have to like every decision that they make. And you should, by all accounts, voice your frustrations with Games Workshop. You should reach out to their customer service people. You should reach out to, their community teams and express to them that you're unhappy with these decisions and that you are electing not to purchase these items because of these rather high price points. But even through saying that, it's not going to make a huge difference. What's going to make a huge difference is if this doesn't perform, and then Games Workshop will reevaluate these kind of things and think, well, that was really unsuccessful. We need to change this going forwards, blah, blah, blah. Because, they're a capitalist business. They are going to do things that make fiscal sense. If they aren't making any money out of this, then they're not going to do stuff like this going forwards. It's just the way this sort of stuff works, generally speaking. But I'm not trying to apologize or shill for them. I'm just saying I don't buy the stuff I don't like. But equally, I don't massively mind if it exists as long as it doesn't become like the status quo. If the hobby became too expensive for me overall, then yeah, sure, I might start to scale back what I get, or I might start to leave the hobby in some way, shape, or form. But I'm not at that stage right now. I just think this was a bit of a poorly thought through decision on their part. and it definitely has negatively impacted them. I mean, what's your vibe on these prices now, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, so the sort of people I have sympathy for, kind of people that are getting into the hobby, people that are students that don't have like a well-paid job, for example, or you're a parent and you're getting your kids into the hobby. It's like for those sorts of people who don't have a flush disposable income that you kind of require for this hobby, I sort of feel for people. Like there is no easy build variants of like the Indomitus range. It's like they are sort of easy builds to an extent, but like with the previous Dark Imperium version, there were easy build kits. You mentioned Redemptor Dreadnought. It's like they did 2 kits at the same time, an easy build and a really expensive multi-part kit. And the easy builds were so much cheaper. And it's like these are great kits to get new blood into the hobby. And at the moment, it's like you're really limiting their choice if you want to get into the hobby. You've got the kind of combat patrol starting boxes, and when they do exist, you've got things like Indomitus, but they are kind of one-time deals that if you weren't in the hobby at that brief month in time or day in some examples when they got released, you're never going to see them again. So yeah, these new kits currently a bit too expensive. Most people probably won't buy them. If you're someone getting into the hobby or getting into that army, you kind of got to bite the bullet, I think, or at least weigh up your options if you can't buy it elsewhere. I sort of get why Games Workshop's done it, though. Like you, don't necessarily agree with it. Doesn't impact me because I have these models already. So but I do have empathy people that do want those models and can't easily afford them because they're cheap, but they're also expensive. It's just the point of view you're looking at it. I think, Chapter Master Varrock did a great breakdown, or one of his fans did a breakdown of the cost to show the honored of the chapter. You're paying 75% of the box price for 14% of the models, which just goes to show how much of saving that box was, like how much of a bargain that was. So anything in comparison is just going to look like it's overpriced and a rip-off, but it's not, because as we've said, characters are worth like 20 quid each on average.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And to your point about, I'm obviously sympathetic to anyone who wants to get into this and can't afford these things, and I'm sympathetic to students and all these things. But I will say this: when I was a student, I was still playing 40k, but I wasn't buying anything because I didn't have the money to. But I just literally toughed it out with the same terrible army for 3 long years, occasionally adding like little bits to it. But yeah, like you just sort of, you're still engaged with the hobby as much as you could do. I mean, admittedly at university, I was preoccupied with other things as well, but I was still very actively involved with it. It was just that when I went to university, the army I had was a Black Templars army, and that was the army I continued to have all the way throughout university. And I can tell you for nothing, Black Templars were not very good for a good chunk of that. I remember I turned up to one game and a mate of mine just had an Imperial Guard army with loads and loads of tanks. And there I was with all of my initiates and neophytes lining up on the back lines, ready to charge. And it was like, cool. Boom, 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 boom. I was like, right, I'll be taking those off then. That was a lot of my games back in like late 3rd edition. That would have been maybe like early. No, it would have been like late. It would have been like mid 4th edition or something. But anyway, yeah, it was a rough old time.
Yeah.
One of the elements, though, that I wanted to talk about, one of the things that I can't really be quite as forgiving about, is the recent scenarios that have been going on with the kill zone boxes. Not so much the kill zone boxes themselves, because again, they extend to the same situation that I would say the Royal Court and the Honor of the Chapter does, which is Games Workshop can charge whatever they like for, for this stuff. But the way they went about advertising the contents of these kill zones for Kill Team was quite intriguing. And the series of events that kind of transpired after the fact made it even more so. So I don't know, Phil, if you want to introduce this topic or whether you want me to keep going.
I'll give it my best shout. So
give it your best shot, Phil. What happened?
Going back in time, probably well over a year ago, it was when Kill Team first got released. They did a bunch of kill zones, giving you all these different environments. Inside the box is a nice kind of fold out card mat that's double sided. You've got a ton of terrain that was super good value. And in addition to that, you got some cards and specific rules for that terrain, for missions that you could play within that kill zone. And they were really good value for money. They were I think they were 50 quid each. And then this year, because they sold out, they were pretty popular, and I was really gutted.
Very popular.
I'll say I was gutted I didn't pick them up when they first came out. So when they announced that they were re-releasing them, I was super pleased. I was like, amazing. I can finally get these boxes that were really good savings for terrain, because terrain is expensive. Like most
really
of those
expensive.
boxes, crazy prices. So I was pleased about that. They announced that they were re-releasing them. All the artwork that they showed was for the sort of old Kill Team kill zones. And then,
which all had the exact same names, by the way.
Yeah, so you've got Sector Frontieris environment expansion, which is the kind of Wild West sort of style. You've got the Sector Munitorum environment expansion, which is crates, big crates, small crates, and little cranes. And then you've got the Sector Mechanicus environment, which is chimney. Well, in this version, it's chimney stacks and pipes. But the difference here is they've changed the contents of all the boxes. The original advertised Warhammer community posts where they were talking about them showed all the old artwork with the old contents. So when they got released, it took a while for people to realize that one, that the contents was actually different. Two, that the price has gone up by 10 quid. So they're now £60 instead of the original price of £50. And yeah, you don't get the Kill Team mission cards in because that's now a separate book, but most people don't really care about that, so that's fine.
So, with one exception, the 2 out of these 3 box sets represented a much worse deal than what you got when they were initially released years ago. They had the same title. They were advertised because that's what Warhammer Community's website is. It's a site for advertising and promoting Games Workshop's products. It's not some friendly, jolly hobbyist who runs a blog reporting on what Games Workshop does. This is legitimate corporate communications from a huge, huge company, right? It used to be that you would say that Games Workshop were big in the sphere of influence that is tabletop wargaming. Now they're just big, right? So we need to be clear that this company is not a little mum and pop shop that we need to give a free ride to. They advertised it on their website, and subsequently it is revealed to us as a community that 2 out of the 3 are not as content complete as we had first thought. Now, bizarrely, Sector Frontieris is actually better value, if you don't want the cards and things anyway, than what they released a couple of years ago, which is very strange, right? So anyone who bought
do you know why that
Frontieris,
is?
I don't know why that is. Please tell me.
Because it didn't sell. Like, but the last one, it was one of the last to be sold, and it stayed on shelves forever, even up until probably a few months ago. Like I've seen it around, which is why, because I remember being in my Games Workshop back. I think it was between the lockdowns and
your own personal Games Workshop.
My own personal Games Workshop, just in the back garden. I was having a wander around,
like Richie Rich in his. He has a McDonald's in his home. You've got a Games Workshop,
pretty much. And they still had one because it's just loiters around. It's cool kit, but it's just not as cross compatible with all the other terrain in the same way that the Mechanicum or the Imperialis stuff is. So I think that was one of the reasons why it didn't sell. There's only one piece, and this is sort of the reason why this is worth getting if you're into the Frontierist range. It's the only way to get the complete building, because most of it is ruins, the Riser ruins. There was, I think, Moonbase Cladius, I think it was called, which was another, a different kind of kill zone. Well, it wasn't a kill zone, but it was a terrain pack with a moon base and all the Riser ruins, which are all kind of just broken down walls and L shapes at best. Whereas this one has 4 complete walls and a roof, so you can actually make a structure, which is quite rare out of that kit. And I kind of wish they sold more of that, because then you could actually convert these kits a bit more to do something other than just be ruins, and like really small ruins, more like kind of walls and obstacles than actual ruined terrain, in the same way we would think about the Imperial or Mechanicus range.
But yeah, so the Sector Minotaurum, or whatever it's called, Minotaurum, I can't remember now. The one with all the crates, Minotaurum, and the one with all of the Mechanicus stuff were reduced quite considerably. In the case of the one with all the crates and cranes, they removed the large crane and 2 of the crates, and then subsequently, a volume of all the smaller kind of scatter terrain pieces. And in the case of the Mechanicus stuff, they removed one of the larger pieces, this large kind of Sector Mechanicus piece of terrain.
Yeah, it was like the large cylinder with a platform, which was a really cool bit, and that was
great bit.
That was the kill zone I wanted the most. It's like I wanted the crate. I kind of wanted all of them. I wanted the crates one, because who doesn't like crates? But I really wanted more Mechanicus stuff, so I really wanted that. And then when I was sort of looking on the website, I was like, oh, where's the bit that I want? And it's like, it's not there. But what they have done is they've swapped it out for more pipes. So you've got, originally I think there were some pipes, but now there's more. So if you want, kill zone pipes, this is the one for you. Although I would also say, on a slight tangent, why are there so many pipes in 40k? And I don't mean that in terms of the lore, I mean in terms of, this is the second variant of pipes. So the first pipes was Promethean pipe relay. This is the second one, which is the plasma conduit. And then in the new Indomitus, like the recruit edition, for example, that does have the new terrain, that is a 3rd set of pipes. It's kind of mad that they've done 3 different pipe designs when they don't really need to.
I mean, everyone needs pipes, Phil. Imagine your home without pipes.
Yeah, I know, but I don't need 3 ornately designed different styles of pipes. It's like,
you've probably got 3 different types of pipes in your house, I would wager.
Possibly, but I don't care about that.
You got like the sewage pipes, the ones that go over the like oven. You got all pipes of all shapes and sizes in your home, Phil.
Yeah, because I would almost say, if you want the thing, my point sort of was, if you want pipes, don't get this. Get the other terrain sets that Games Workshop do that feature the new pipes, because you get more of it. It's a pretty similar price, and it's probably actually just better, I think. Like better value,
that's a fair assertion.
Money. Let's have a quick look. So there's Battlezone Vertigus, which is 90 quid, which has pipes plus ruins plus like a shrine thing and like a forge, I would say. That's 90 quid, so that's a bit more, but you get way more stuff, plus you also get 2 boards, not 1.
There are definitely better deals out there. I think the Killzone Minotaurum hub, or whatever it was, is definitely the real loser, because they just took so much out of it. 2 crates and a big crane. And where it gets really shady, in my opinion, and where it gets quite interesting is Games Workshop obviously advertised this like this. But if you go onto a third-party reseller, so I bought the Minotaurum hub via Element Games. Element Games doesn't actually call out the contents of these boxes, right? Like, it doesn't, like on the Games Workshop site, say and break down the contents, right? So look,
well, quite often
game,
it doesn't even have the photo, because it's so new. Stuff for pre-order doesn't even have an image.
Yeah. Because what I was going to say is fair play if you went onto Games Workshop's website, because at the end of the day, you will have, at the point of, if you purchased it from Games Workshop's website, their product listing would very clearly state the contents, right? Like that's very clear on their website. So at the point of purchase, if you've not then taken the time to read this stuff at the point where they've kind of unveiled the truth and got, actually, this is the contents, well, then that's, you're technically not, Games Workshop are technically not at fault at that point, because despite the fact that they've advertised the wrong thing, they've essentially revealed at the point of purchase that what you're actually buying is this. Whereas when you then go on to buy it through someone like Element, you don't have that safeguard. You've seen the advertising, you've been told this is what you're getting when you pre-order, so you go and you pre-order, which is what I did. And I'm someone that's actually quite active in the community. I missed this fact at the point that I pre-ordered. I discovered maybe an hour later, when all the news started going around, that people in the community were like, hey, did anyone actually notice that this stuff is different than what was advertised? And at that point, I was like, it's too much of a hassle to cancel that order, because I still want crates. I still want them crates. And it's still an okay deal for crates and cranes for what it is. It's just not as good a deal as what I thought I was going to get. So, I've acted with my money, and I've purchased this thing, but I did do so as a result of essentially being misled. They falsely advertised this to me, and I purchased it based on what they sold me, and I haven't, redacted that or I haven't, refunded that, because I was just like, well, I still wanted the contents, right? So after I knew the facts, I still decided to keep the pre-order active. But I wonder how many other people did it without knowing until the thing arrived. And the thing that is most interesting to me is this. Games Workshop have since gone back and altered their articles, altered their posts, altered all mentions of this. They have essentially attempted to cover up the fact that they have miscommunicated. And that is where it gets really interesting. Because if you've done wrong, it's fair enough if you've made a mistake. There are ways that you can work with your consumers through your third-party retailers, through your partners, to communicate to your consumers and express to them your deepest apologies that you have made a mistake, and seek to rectify it if that mistake is legitimate. Like, that is, in my opinion, good customer service. The issue that we have here is Games Workshop have issued no such statement. No, offers have been made to people who've bought these under false pretenses, and Games Workshop have gone back to cover up the fact that they had done wrong in the first place. And that's where it gets really weird to me. Like, that's pretty bad, I think. Like that, I don't know. What's your vibe on that, Phil?
Yeah, obviously it's just a mistake from the Warhammer community team. Like that, they just probably had the old assets and either actually genuinely thought it was a reprint, effectively, of the old boxes. Because why wouldn't they assume it? It's the same name. They've seen it before. I guess they're not in the office as well. So, it's all, potentially they're working from home. So they didn't actually get to see the kit to realize that they were. So just probably internal miscommunication. 100% genuine mistake. Totally get that.
Oh.
But you do have a point. They should have just said, look, we're really sorry that if you bought this because you thought it was the old kit, it's actually slightly changed. They could have even said to a different deal or to a better deal, because, as you said, the Frontierist one, potentially slightly better than the old one. If you want pipes, the Mechanicum one might be better from the old one. But what they should have just done is just gone, if you bought this and you want a refund, you can get a refund, which is a bit odd. They don't necessarily, they do that anyway. Like, if you bought it and you haven't opened it up, you'll get a refund. Even if you have opened it up, potentially you could message them and I'm sure they would refund you, or you'd have to send it back.
You get a refund if you've got proof of purchase. I think in this instance, I think they should have just extended an offer to everyone, just being like, look, in this very specific instance, for these very specific boxes, we will extend an offer that if you turn up into a Games Workshop store with this box sealed, content complete, correct, we will just give you a refund there and then, regardless of what documentation it comes with and all this stuff. You know, obviously, if you're turning up with 50 of them, I'm sure they'll probably waiver that right. But you know what I mean? Like, there should have been. I just think it's one of those instances where Games Workshop should have just owned up. And I think the problem is as a community, I feel like we feel a little bit hard done by with this, not because of the fact that they sold us something that they didn't. You know, again, we accept that these guys make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The problem is how you redeem those mistakes. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you address it. They have clearly been found out. We're not the only people in the community putting out content like this saying that this is not good. They should have addressed it. But they haven't, and they won't, and it will just go on, and it's fine. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, you could, like Phil has said, you can still go back into the stores with this thing sealed and get the opportunity to replace it. They will give you a what's it called? We replace, not refund, store credit, or you could just swap it. You can just swap it for another thing. Yeah, so you'll be able probably to do that, which is fine. It's just a bit of a bitter taste, really. It's just a bit like, oh, come on, guys. And
yeah, for me, it was more, I was really looking, I knew I'd missed out on a good deal last time when they sold the original version. So when they said they were going to re-release them, I was like, brilliant, that's cool. But to find out like that they'd just gone up 10 quid, which is no small amount, like from 50 to 60,
not for this.
I was like, oh, like really? Like you had to do that? It just, as you said, it's a bitter pill to swallow to go, oh, okay, right, I'm going to buy them. They cost 10 quid more. I could have made more of a saving if I just bought them last year. Right, that's my bad, my mistake. A bit like the Indomitus box. It's like, if you didn't buy it then and you chose not to, it's kind of on you. But then
lessons learned.
But then with this, it was like, as I was going to buy it, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this, where's these bits that I want? And then you go, oh, it's not the same content. So it's like, okay, it's either less or different content, and it costs more money. Yeah, you're having me on now. Like, and I basically refused to buy them. As much as I kind of want to, they're still good savings in comparison to buying the individual kits individually. But I'm just a bit like, I don't want them that much. Like, I liked them when I thought it was a good bargain and I really wanted them before, but it's like they don't have what I want and they're not enough saving. I mean, potentially the crates one, maybe I'll go around and buy that at some point, because as I said, who doesn't want more crates? But the Sector Mechanicum one is just a write-off. There's no point buying that one at all.
Do you know what the extra hilarious final joke of this release is, Phil? Could you hazard a guess what last thing they could do with this release that makes it extra funny?
Ooh, I don't know.
I'll tell you. Kill Team Kill Zones, the £25 book. Could you imagine what the contents of that book is?
Well, do you know what? I'm quite curious because I was tempted to buy it, but they haven't really explained.
Well, Phil, note that Killzone Sector Mechanicus, Killzone Sector Frontierus, and Killzone Sector Minotaurum are absent their old card components from their original release. And do you know why that is, Phil?
Are they just in the book?
That is the sole contents of this book.
Wait.
Is all of the rules that you used to get included in the boxes, and Phil, and they directly reference the kill zones as named, but all of the layouts, all of the missions, all of the different ways that you can utilize these kill zones feature items of terrain that are not present in these new boxes because they've all been removed.
I presume,
except for Sector Frontiers.
I presume though they include all the other kill zones as well, right? Like all the others.
They've got a few extra. Yeah, they've got a few extra rules in there, but predominantly it's rules for these free kill zone boxes that they've released. But yeah, literally, if you get Sector Mechanicus kill zone and you buy the kill zone, and then you buy kill team kill zones. In there, it has layouts for specific missions, showing you how to lay out the board, featuring the large bit of terrain that you don't have.
That's a bit annoying.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like, wow. Like, talk about phoning it in. Like, I know Killzone isn't the bestest thing in all of 40k right now, although I actually really like it. But, like, come on. Like, talk about attention to detail. Don't release a book and literally just phone it in and copy and paste a bunch of stuff that you released in, component parts years ago, especially when it features content that you're not even, okay, fair enough. It's not really difficult to buy those extra bits of scenery to then be able to play the missions, but it sort of felt like it was supposed to be a simple solution for players. It was supposed to just be, buy this Killzone box, buy this Killzone book. Way!
Yeah, so it's like the boxes are 10 quid more expensive without those missions, and then you have to spend 25 quid on a book to get those missions back. It's like, to be honest, I prefer the concept of the book more than the cards. But you're effectively paying, if you get one kill zone plus the book, you're paying 35 quid for those missions effectively, because of the lack of saving. No, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, just a bitter pill to swallow after having just had the pill of Indomitus, the honoured heroes, the chapter of the £89 box. Yeah, it's just all at once is a bit much.
It's an own goal, isn't it? It very much is not ideal. And then obviously we haven't got around to addressing Kill Team Pariah Nexus.
The other own goal, I was going to say.
Can I be controversial?
You love it.
I don't mind Kill Team Pariah Nexus. I think it's actually a really nice box. I don't necessarily feel like it's a £95 box, but for £80 and 75 pence via the good people of Element Games, we aren't sponsored, by the way.
You said that.
Really
I do have an affiliate link.
Phil is sponsored.
Well, not officially, but I mean, you can.
Well, of course you are officially. How are you not officially if you're affiliated?
I mean, anyone can sign up for an affiliate link.
You're telling me that you're destroying your own credibility.
Oh yes, I went through rigorous signing up processes. Yeah. They hunted me down, and they said, "We want you."
Exactly. We're going to launch this whole, retail platform based off of Phil.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course. Why not?
But I don't mind Kill Team Pariah Nexus. I actually think it's quite a nice little box. I think, the terrain is actually much nicer when you see it in person than when you see it in pictures. It's agreed that it's not really something that you're going to get a lot of use out of outside of the confines of Kill Team Pariah Nexus. But the way the missions are laid out and the way the game is structured is a really nice way to play Kill Team. Now, is it as compelling or three-dimensional or as exciting as, traditional Kill Team with all of the lovely big terrain and all of that stuff? No, but, it's a really nice solution for playing Kill Team, on a kitchen table, or potentially something more portable that you could take, to play on your lunch breaks should you work at the sort of place where you're not going to get horridly teased for playing Warhammer 40,000 on your lunch break. Yes, the lack of a core rulebook, and this was another example of Games Workshop retrospectively changing their articles because the initial article said the core rules would be included, yet they weren't, which is interesting, isn't it, Phil? Because when you buy any supplement or any edition of extra rules for Warhammer 40,000, the first or most consistent thing they put in those books now is the full rulebook. Like, I was talking to Richie about this the other day. He was saying to me, do you know why the Crusade book, the Veil book, the Necron book is so long?
Yeah.
Because it has the core rules in it.
Well, what's interesting about that, I believe, is it's not the full rules. It's like the kind of core rules, not necessarily some of the advanced stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the Crusade rules in there. So if you want to go, how do I build my Crusade army? I finished my mission. What do I do next? You've still got to go back to the original book. And it's like, why can't they have just made that Crusade sort of supplement just to have it all in there. Maybe
That's amazing.
I don't know. Well, that's what I've heard when I checked out one of the reviews. After on a side tangent, after that episode, I do really want to get it, and with the upcoming release of the sort of Death Guard one, I'm kind of tempted to buy them both, and maybe we do another episode all about Crusade.
You know what I feel like they should have been doing with the GT packs and the Crusade packs and all these other things is they should break them down into segments that you could just use in a binder.
Yeah.
They kind of give it to you in a binder, but wouldn't it be nice if they just sort of went, no, here's a bunch of individual littler things, and they all just go into your own custom binders. So if you want to be playing competitive, you get the core rule bit, and then you get the GT bit, and then you just whack them in a binder, and then you're off to the races.
They could sell faction-specific binders for days. The monetization options are just huge. Like you want to
exactly get on the binders. That's what we all want. We want binders. That's how you really cement the ultra cool aspects of anything. Is give us a binder.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, look, genuinely, right, in terms of content, I really like Heavy Intercessor kit. I built it, really love it. I think it's great. Captain model's really beautiful. Looking forward to putting together the flailed ones. Bizarrely, I've seen people playing Kill Team Nexus, and in some of the games I've seen, the flailed ones and the Necrons seemingly do better within the confines of the way that they've laid out prior Nexus than the Heavy Intercessors, because there's lots of narrow corridors and there's lots of opportunities for them to run in and to really kind of get to work in the phase of the game where they're most efficient. So a lot of the potential frailty of the flailed ones is compensated for by the way that they lay out the terrain.
Well, I also got the impression it was a lot of the missions are sort of asymmetrical, sort of making the Space Marines the attackers. So basically, the Marines are overpowered, like points wise, even for Kill Team. Like they have a huge advantage over the Necrons. So I think they balanced it with the way the missions lay out to make the Marines do sort of the hard work to sort of balance out the game. And I've seen a couple of back reps. One, the Marines won, the other one, the Necrons won. So potentially it's actually more balanced than it first seems.
Yeah. Also, though, it's very similar to Kill Team Arena. And Kill Team Arena is not a version of Kill Team that's been heavily adopted by the community. Most of the Kill Team tournaments now use their own kind of competitive pack, because I think people still really enjoy the three-dimensional aspects of it. I think Kill Team is best expressed through really beautiful, dense boards, densely populated boards with lots of 3D elements. But Arena has its place because it's a very different type of Kill Team experience. Kill Team Heroes or whatever it's called.
Commanders.
Kill Team HQ. Commanders. That I'm not super into. I don't understand the need.
Well, there's Commanders, Elites. They just seem to be shoving expansions down our throat, and with the exception of Rogue Trader, I don't think anyone really cares all that much. I think a lot of even Kill Team players won't be that fussed about prior Nexus. I think a lot of people will be buying it for Heavy Intercessors because they want Heavy Intercessors. And the funny thing of that is, so there was a post on Facebook that I saw where a store in Germany randomly got sent by Games Workshop a box of Heavy Intercessors. No price, no nothing, just a box of them. So they're clearly coming out in the not too distant future.
Oh, totally.
So if you're buying it for the Heavy Intercessors, you maybe don't need to. But as we said before, there's some savings there if you want the Necrons, if you kind of care about the terrain. I think it's a overpriced box set. It's 95 quid for a couple of units, really mediocre terrain. It's for 120 quid for the full Kill Team game with really amazing terrain. Two teams which are a bit so they're just standard.
You can't buy the original Kill Team box.
Not the original, but the second version, which was Tau
you
versus
can't buy
Space
that anymore either.
Oh, I thought you could.
I think that's. Oh no, you can. Yeah. Sorry, I think you are right. Check it though, Phil. Have a quick look. But I think I acknowledge it's not a great deal. Like, I'm not here saying that I think it was great value, but I like it. I think it's, and the other thing that's really interesting about it, and it's weird to me that they did it this way. It's the only way that you're going to, at the moment at least, get the new Space Marine rules for Kill Team, which is super interesting.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's got all of the new like Space Marine units and stuff. They've increased the wounds for tactical Marines to 2 and changed the points and so on. And the only way you get access to this is through the Prior Nexus book, which again, for me, as someone who was playing Space Marines in Kill Team, is a great addition for me anyway, because it meant that, cool, I got the updated rules for my Space Marines when I'm playing Kill Team. So I don't mind. I mean, look, for me personally, I was happy with the purchase, and I was happier still when I got it. I read through the expansion rule set. I thought it was really interesting. I think it's a fun way to approach Kill Team, but it is certainly not the best expression of the Kill Team experience. And I think if you are getting into Kill Team, I wouldn't recommend this as the way to do so. But as someone who owns all the Kill Team books and has played a little bit of it and enjoyed it, you know, I was just sort of happy to add it to my collection. And also I like getting the heavy intercessors and the captain. And, you know, I am exploring options around the increasing Necron range of models that I have. And the flailed ones are really beautiful kits. Like, I really like the flailed one kits. So, yeah, for me, it wasn't too difficult a decision to make. But I do understand why a lot of people are like, it's not for me. And if that's the case, don't buy it. That's as straightforward as I can state it. Just don't get it if you don't want it. Because
that's the thing. Yeah. It's not it's not a standalone game. It is an expansion. You got to have the original rules for it. So the Warhammer Kill Team starter set, which is the big box, £95, temporarily out of stock. So it is coming back. That comes with 2 squads, you know, Tau and Reavers.
Someone buy the Reavers, please.
A ton of Sector Mechanicum terrain, probably taken from those Killzone boxes, because it's got the nice little cylinder, plus all the chimneys and pipes and scaffolding. That is great. I think this is a better value deal overall, but it comes with the core rule book if you want to get into Kill Team. Like, this is for you. I think if Nexus Prior had... or Prior Nexus, if it had some better terrain in, it would have almost been a bit of a no-brainer. As you said, it's something like if you're a die-hard Kill Team fan, you'll pick it up anyway. If you're someone that's really a 40k player and you just want it for the models, it's probably not worth it, I think. Unless, of course, you play Space Marines and Necrons, or you can palm off half to someone else. But I don't think it's that good. Like, if you compare it to Rogue Trader, which probably was a similar price point, maybe it was like 100 and a bit more, but it's like every sculpt is different. Like, a lovely board, double-sided.
Every sculpt, there was duplicates in there.
Say it again.
Duplicate models in the
well, you know, but pretty much it's like you've got your Rogue Trader, you've got your Galapox Infected. They're all really beautiful sculpts. They're all brand new.
You've got the dog model.
Yeah,
the model of a dog. I mean, that was pretty amazing.
Exactly. To me, that's the way better deal. And it's like, if you look at what's coming out now with Curse City, that's probably going to be not much more expensive than this. It's like a brand standalone game, like dozens and dozens of models. They're all brand new sculpts. Yeah, there's some repeated stuff with the zombies, but that is going to be a fantastic value box deal with a really killer game in. It's going to be phenomenal, and it's maybe going to be like 20 quid more. And I think a lot of people are viewing it this way. It's like, am I spending £95 for some heavy intercessors and a Kill Team that I'm probably never going to play? Or am I going to save up for Curse City, which is just around the corner? It's like, I'm doing Curse City.
I can agree that I feel like it's overpriced. I think probably if they'd come at it at £80, I think that would have been a better price point for it. Then with like a 15% discount from a reseller, it would have been, you know, closer to £70, and then it would have been a much more easier easier decision to make for people. But look, I mean, I'm not immune to the fact that it's not a great deal. I just don't mind it. For me personally, I'm very happy with it. I do not have buyer's remorse off of that one, quite in the same way as I did with those crates and things that I got alongside it. But I mean, that's the thing. I'll certainly probably find myself getting more use out of Pariah Nexus's content than I will out of the Rogue Trader one that I bought many moons ago, which I'm now just giving away to Phil as a late birthday present because I just don't want it in my house anymore.
I'll make good use of it.
Well, exactly. There you go. And your happiness, Phil, is reward enough. It's worth the price of admission.
Well, thank you very much.
It's all right, mate. It's all right. But yeah, Pariah Nexus is an interesting one. I think Pariah Nexus in isolation wouldn't have been that big a deal. I think, as illustrated with the way that they've broken down other releases in the past, I think if they had approached the breakdown of Indomitus a little bit more traditionally, I don't think that would have necessarily have been as big a problem. I'm not going to suggest that I don't think the way that they handled the communications around the kill zones wouldn't be a big problem under any context, because I think that really was a very unfortunate series of mistakes on their part, and hopefully something they're going to learn from. I don't want to see anyone get in trouble. I don't want to see anyone, kind of dragged over the coals for it, but I also don't want us to pretend that it's a good, that it's acceptable. You know what I mean? Like it's not
practice you want to see happening on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. I am 100% in favor of saying and supporting the notion that mistakes happen, because of course they do. Everyone makes mistakes, but Games Workshop does need to iron out those kind of things. I understand that they don't necessarily have as much experience as some other entities at running these kind of marketing outfits and promoting things and putting communications out there into the public domain. But irrespective of that, they need to improve, because people aren't always going to be as forgiving. And I don't want to see those guys getting in any hot water over anything, because I love Games Workshop as a company and I love what they do with Warhammer, and I want that to continue to be the case for a long time, and I want them to continue to support the community the way they do. So let's not punish them for unnecessarily for what is a mistake, but let's acknowledge that it's a bad look. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's a bit of a blip overall looking at those releases. And as you said, Nexus Prior, not a huge great deal. I'm not a massive fan of it. But in isolation, it's kind of okay, right? If you want it, you'll get it. It's not like the others where you go, I want to buy them because I want the unique sculpts, like with Rogue Trader, or just because it's a bundle saving. It's like, on the plus side, the heavy intercessors are the full multi-part kits. They're not like easy build versions, so that's great. Like, you're kind of getting some savings there. I just think the terrain is the thing that let that release down. And as you said, it's like the overall bunch of releases all pretty much within the same week is just a bit of like oh my god, as long as this isn't a trend, that's what worries me, because maybe we've just been spoiled over the last few years where there's been a lot of good releases, there's a lot of sort of bundle deals, the combat patrols and the starter boxes and stuff. There's been lots of stuff where you can get good value for money. If everything's starting to go up in price and the value for money bundle deals aren't as good value for money, then it'd just be a bit of a sad, because we've been enjoying the luxurious high life of bundle deals galore.
Totally. And look, 10 years ago, the idea of Games Workshop making you an offer of any value beyond, exactly what it is to the penny was an alien concept, right? Because you remember back in the day on like the Games Workshop websites, they used to do these website bundles.
They still do them. So
oh yeah, of course they do. But it used to be like the laughing.
Yeah, it's a bundle deal on the website where you add up the contents of, say, the 3 different boxes in that bundle deal, and it's the exact same price. So it's a bundle deal in terms of it's saving you clicking around the website to add each individual item into your cart, but you're not actually making a saving. Unlike, surprisingly, the Forge World bundle deals, which are a saving.
Not always, but sometimes.
I think they predominantly are, yeah.
I don't think all
Well,
of them are. I don't want to.
I don't want to say they all are because I've not checked, but the ones I have looked into have all been like a decent saving.
Oh yeah, because you're eyeing up Imperial Knights again, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, just today, out of kind of casual chit chats with the Rapid Fire Wargaming guys, yeah, we were talking about knights, and I do remember an old bundle deal that they did with the Knight Megara, Knight Styrax, and Atropos, which they still have as a bundle deal on that website, and I presume the price is a saving because it used to be.
It's out of stock again.
No, I know it was. It was this morning. It's been out of stock.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. I felt like it was in stock
there's
this morning.
two. There's the Styrax and the Megara, which is the two smaller knights, as a deal on its own. So that's one bundle deal which is available for sale, and then the one with the Atropos added in is out of stock.
Yes.
And that was the one I was.
Yeah, because the Atropos is very much temporarily out of stock at the moment, but. Yeah, I mean, Forge World are a different entity for a bunch of different reasons, right? They do their own thing, which is more power to them, I suppose. But also on the topic of actually really good deals, though, and something that in a lot of ways kind of righted a lot of community woes over the last couple of weeks was the announcement of Imperium, which is the successor to the incredibly successful and incredibly popular Warhammer 40,000 Conquest series. So Imperium is a spectacular value, right, Phil?
Yeah, so Imperium's got, in terms of the contents, Space Marines and Necrons, Mechanicus, and Sisters of Battle. The Sisters of Battle are from the kind of easy build kits from the Sisters of Battle special box release from 2 years ago now.
Yeah, it was like Christmas 2019.
Yeah, so they said, this is it, we're not going to see him again, but now we finally are. So those are coming back into it. So, and there is a lot of the Indomitus box set in there. There is not the Honoured Honoured chapter, because that would be a massive kick to the sacks, so to speak. Yes, but the Royal Court is in there, and if it is on one sprue, for example, may well be available for £8, which is a great saving if you can get your hands on it. I think there's the Easy Build Assault Intercessors, and some of the Outriders are going to be in there. Which Outriders, as we said, retail for over £30. So the fact that if you could, now it depends on how many sprues those Outriders are. Didn't you say they're over 2?
They are over 2 sprues, yeah. So whether or not they'll give you both sprues,
no, it's always one sprue per issue. So it'll be split over 2 issues, which will be still under £20, which is still a saving. So if
they might.
Oh, go on.
They might throw in the ATV or whatever it is on the ATV, the what's it called, the quad bike or whatever.
No, I think the ATV might be in there as well. Actually,
is it called an ATV?
Yeah, that's the ATV. ATV is the quad bike one. Yeah.
Really? Why do they call it an ATV?
All terrain vehicle, because that's what it is.
Oh, I thought it was like armored transport vehicle ATV.
Maybe in a different universe.
Okay, fine.
So there's all those things. There is terrain as well, which is really cool, and obviously it's loads of Necrons, load of Necron units. No Silent King or anything like that, but there's a lot of.
Could you imagine the monolith of the Silent King?
It would probably come over like they did the Repulsor, and that came over. I think it was 3 issues for the sprues and another issue for literally the base and the little nubbin. And it's like, if you didn't need the floaty bit, you could save yourself a bit of money, but overall it was just buy that issue because it's still such a bargain. So I bought 2 lots. Oh yeah, I bought of those.
I bought 2 repulsors out of Conquest.
Yeah, same here, because it was like, that's a bargain, and you're saving yourself like £20 at least, I think, on each one.
Yeah, at least. I bought a lot of attack bikes and a lot of other stuff out of it as well. Like, I was going into Forbidden Planet in London weekly and just buying loads of specific issues that they had bundled up in the corners. And stuff.
In terms of the technical details, I think there's like 83 or 85 issues. First issue's £2.99, then it goes, I think then it's £2.99, £5.99, I think, and then it's £8 or £7.99 for the rest. You can subscribe. There's an extra premium subscription, which is £2 extra an issue. And in addition to what you get for that is you get 4 extra armies that are about £40. No, I think you're basically paying £40 extra per army. There's a Chaos one, an Orc one, a Tower one, and something else that I can't remember. Oh, Tyranids.
Yeah, Tyranids. Yeah.
And the extra cost, so it's an extra £2 an issue, but there's 80 issues, so it all adds up to a lot. But it's basically you're paying £40 per mini army, but it's about 80 quid's worth of stuff for each one.
I mean, they're not really mini armies, are they? They're probably not. They're barely combat patrol.
I'd say bigger than combat patrol. Just about.
Mate, maybe. Like in the case of the Chaos, isn't it just like a couple of Greater Possessed, 1 unit of Chaos Space Marines, a Sorcerer, and the weird spider testicle creature?
The Venom.
The Venom Crawler?
Venom Crawler, that's it, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's not like a combat patrol, is it?
It's probably a bit more, I would say.
All right, fine. We'll agree to disagree.
The Orc one has less, but comes with paint, which is a bit unique to that one. In terms of the premium, you also get other stuff, like you get some clippers and some other bits and bobs, and there's some other freebies thrown in along the way. You also get binders for all the magazines. Most people, unless you're a kid, you're going to maybe read them, keep the instruction stuff, but you're probably going to chuck a lot of it away. As you said earlier, Dan, though, these all come with, the ability to add them to binders, which is a cool concept. So maybe they need to be doing that for those chapter approved stuff. There's 80 odd issues, but half of those issues tend to be paint as well. So what they've previewed is all the models, but in addition to that is pretty much every other issue, if it's like Conquest, will be paints. I think someone's done the maths, is about 700 quid's worth of you're paying 700 quid or thereabouts if you got all 80 issues or 80 plus issues, but you are saving £500 worth of stuff in terms of the savings that you're making. So quite a substantial, it's like 30-40 odd % worth of stuff. That's obviously looking at Games Workshop prices. This is obviously a UK only thing, so if you're listening in another country, I feel sorry for you. Conquest did get rolled out to other countries, though, very slowly and only to a handful. So if you're in one of those countries, then you may well be able to get this at a later date. Subscribing, I don't think is worth it. You can, when the issues come out, if you're based in the UK, you can buy them through Hachette Publishing, who's the publisher. You can go direct and buy issues off their website. That I don't think is the best way, because people will just go there in droves and they tend to sell out very quickly. So you've got to be a bit on it if that's how you want to do it. You can subscribe.
You do get some bonuses though for subscribing. So like they give you gifts, not even for like the premium version, but just being a subscriber. Plus also they give you free issues and things like that.
Yeah, so there is a bit of saving, but you're paying for extra to an extent. And sometimes what they do is there will be a special gift that you have to effectively. Sorry, say that again.
Paying for extra to an extent.
Oh, I'm just trying to think. You don't need to pay postage. So yeah, you're not actually.
You can pay the cost. What they do is bizarrely, and again, I subscribed idiotically because I really shouldn't have, because I'm trying to get rid of stuff. And again, the sense of FOMO was so real. I was like, must subscribe to this incredible deal, even though I'm like, I own all this stuff and I don't, and I don't want it. But hey, there you go. I'm waiting to see how they do it, but I feel like they bundle it all up into like the end of month, and they go, there you go. There's 4 issues in all.
Yeah, so that is how they did it last time. So they ship out pretty much 4 issues at a time. So if you're subscribing, you actually have to wait longer than anyone else. Because you're getting your issues effectively free
they throw in like extra little trinkets.
Yeah,
and
you get
things and-
little freebies. Like I said, you get like the clippers and paints and stuff, or paintbrushes. You get a couple of those bits given to you at certain times throughout the subscription, as well as these 4 bonus mini army combat patrol things. They come along, but what they do also sometimes, like, here's a gift, here's a book. It's going to cost you an extra 40 quid, but you have to opt out of it. So in the last one, it was like a Silver Templars art on law book. That came with some transfers, I think, as well. And it's something that you sort of auto-subscribed into, and it's an extra cost because they will charge you for it, but you have a couple of days normally to opt out of it. So you need to be aware that that tends to happen in these things. I think the best way
I mean, I'm seeing my subscription, but I couldn't be bothered to get into calling the publishers and doing it through that method. But I didn't create an account when I got the when I signed up to it, so I've got to wait for them to send me my first issue. So as I then get my subscriber number, so as I can input the subscriber number to then cancel, which is quite hilarious.
I had an interesting one with them recently, and it was quite positive, sort of in terms of their customer service. So I was trying to. It was when they were whittling down the Conquest issues, and they had on sale the limited edition Captain model. And for context, there is also a new limited edition Captain model in the new Imperium one. It's quite a cool sculpt, a bit of an odd pose. I definitely want it just to convert up. But I was trying.
He's looking at his hair, isn't he? He's like, ooh, pretty sword.
Yeah, I think he's trying to like block a blow, but it doesn't really work when there's not another model there.
We are in the Peaky Blinders hairstyle period of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine.
Oh, they love doing that kind of kind of thing.
Anyway, sorry,
so I wanted to get another one of the original limited edition captains from Conquest, and they still had them, so I signed up. I bought it.
It's an ultra lieutenant.
Oh, it's a lieutenant, is it? Boom. I'll pretend he's a captain. No, he's a lieutenant. Okay. So I bought him, and I got a couple of issues of Age of Sigmar one as well, the Mortal Realms, because there was a few bits there that I wanted for my Mortime project. So I did that. And I didn't get an email to confirm anything. And I was like, oh, that's a bit odd. And I did create an account. So I logged in and it didn't show up anything there. And I was like, well, that's a bit odd. I left it a few days. And then eventually I contacted customer service to be like, oh, I've not had this. And I also checked that at this point, the limited edition Lieutenant issue had sold out as well. So I was like, oh, no. What's going to happen? So they had said, oh, we'd actually accidentally oversold that issue. And presumably there was something because I didn't process my order. So they were like, you can either hold out on the off chance that we're going to get more copies, but because we're winding down the range, I don't think we will. We can give you a full refund, or we can give you like a partial refund for that and send out the other issue. So I was like, great, I will do that. So I still get my Mortal Realms issue. And then they were like, we're going to have to pay you by check though. And I was like, why? Because I paid by card. And they were like, that's just how we do refunds. And I was like, okay. So I do have a check sat at home, because obviously I can't go to a bank at the moment because they're not open, or they're open.
They are open.
They're open during the working days when I'm actually at work, and not open at the weekend when I'm free to actually go do it. But the weird thing is they accidentally refunded me the full price. So it's like I got one issue of Mortal Realms for free. So I was like, well, thank you very much. That's nice of you.
Well, as of right now, you haven't. When's that check expire?
Well, who knows? I mean, it could be any day now.
You've given up caring about it, haven't you? You just like the story of the fact that you've that you've got their money.
I've
not
got a check
necessarily that
I'm going to frame.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
That's it. They'll be like, when you come to finally cash that check, they'll be like, they'll trigger alarms. They'll be like, this is way too overdue.
Yes.
No.
Anyway, going back to Imperium though, my suggestion is just to order the issues you like and get them through Forbidden Planet, because it's a great saving. But who also wants to spend 700 quid to get the entire set? So
apparently I did.
Oh well, of course.
I'm definitely.
But yeah, I would say just pick a mix, the ones you want. So the way to get around it, apparently, and I don't know why I'm telling people this, because you're potentially stopping me from doing this as well, because if it sells out I'll be annoyed. But the Forbidden Planet have a cap on the number of orders that you do for postage. So if you order more than 5, they cap your postage costs. And I think if you order then 8 or more, you then make a saving, because they actually, I think they're like 20p cheaper per issue, but you pay like a £5 postage. So if you get 8 or so issues, you've made up for your postage costs, and then you can just keep ordering more. And then there's a couple of websites that kind of leak the contents. So Forbidden Planet quite often have the issues up, but there's no artwork on them and there's no description with them. So all you know is the issue number. But if you kind of correspond to the website that's listing the contents of each issue, you can take a very brave attempt at buying some stuff and hope the contents comes out okay. I've actually found that Forbidden Planet tends to have tons of stock and doesn't easily go out of stock. And quite often, even with Conquest, when stuff went out of stock, like with the not captain, the lieutenant, he did come back in for like another cycle of prints because it was such a popular issue. So that's the best way about going it. And I do believe Forbidden Planet also do international orders, from what I've heard. Obviously, I've not tried it, but it might be worth looking into if you're an international person. But I suspect the postage costs will offset it to the point where it's not worth it for you. So yeah.
I mean, Forbidden Planet, for the sake of context, for those who are outside of the UK, is essentially our probably lead comic book retailer. So they essentially import and sell US comic books, but they also sell a range of other things, such as, you know, obviously magazines and UK comics and anime and art books and all that stuff. So you know, they're your typical comic book retailer and or store. But yeah, look, I mean, in terms of you know, this new range of magazines, for some reason I was going to say mag and then decided to finish the entire word, but did so really weirdly there. This entire range of magazines is really exciting. I think, again, it represents some really exciting ways that Games Workshop are approaching their pricing models, and it really is a fantastic opportunity for people to get into the hobby, and I wholly support that. And I think at the end of the day, though, for people like me and Phil, subscriptions don't seem like the best way forwards. For, you know, people who want to get into this hobby, or, you know, maybe it's a father and son combo or something of that nature, this is a really good entry point. And in those instances, I 100% support the idea of subscribing. In fact, I would encourage it, because I think to go through this as a range of releases and build this collection and build those armies would be really exciting for a couple kind of like new gamers to do. And I think, you know, by subscribing, you get out of the weird kind of like rat race that people like myself and Phil want to get involved in when something, you know, good comes along that we want apparently 8 copies of.
Yeah, I mean, I think this
which did happen in Conquest.
Yeah,
though, right?
This is really good, as you say, for kids. I think, like, having bought multiple copies and read them, like they teach you how to play the rules from issue 1 slowly through all the issues as you add in new squad members or characters. They teach you those rules specific to them. They've got all the data profiles for those models as you go along. The instructions for those kits are all in there as well. Each issue tends to have lore and artwork all about the models that you tend to be buying. Sometimes they go off on tangents about other stuff, but some of it is artwork I've never seen before. I think very few of it is new artwork, but it's just probably not very rarely seen outside of codexes that you might not have seen them before.
Games Workshop have so much artwork.
Oh, like
it's so dense.
I think, you know, it's basically 82 or so issues, 1 a week, because that's the rate they get released. It's about a year and a half. So to say spending £700 on Games Workshop over a year and a half isn't that much, I guess, when you break it down. It's like, it's nice and manageable. You're going to get a bunch of armies, especially if you've got, you know, multiple kids that you want to get into the hobby. Someone's got Necrons, someone's got Space Marines, someone can have Sisters and AdMech, and the terrain, I guess, to make it fair. Like, that's a lot of stuff.
Also, if you do like the premium version, then you can add in some orcs and some whatever. Obviously, that does massively increase the price. But the thing is with it is, like, I do think it's interesting because it exposes an issue with the Necrons, that the Necrons are on their own, and yet the Imperium becomes this wide array of different options. Some of the stuff they've put in there, by the way, the fact that they've put Gilliman in is pretty incredible.
And minus Calgar as well.
Marnius Calgar, yeah. So Gilliman, Marnius Calgar. I thought for a while it had Belisarius Call in it, but it's just a regular.
Yeah.
At first glance, I was like, "Oh, hang on, they put Call in here as well." But no, no. But again, that is a great example of what GW is doing with their pricing, and that's a great example of what they've been doing. That's really exciting and really good for consumers. So, as much as we can slam them for stuff that they've done potentially poorly, they are still doing good things, and they are still being very customer facing, and they are not customer facing, but just being very good to their customers and offering us just more ways of engaging with the hobby. And, you know, myself and Phil represent really a very specific part of the hobby. You know, we're real kind of like diehard fans. So our perspective is always going to lean towards this kind of very kind of comfortable relationship with spending a certain amount of money with Games Workshop, because that's just what we're accustomed to do. I mean, for, you know, goodness sake, Phil's first army since he got back into the hobby was Krieg. Essentially, he just decided to just kind of, you know, put his wallet down on the table and look the other way, essentially. So, you know, when we start talking pricing, we do have a very specific relationship with this stuff. But yeah, but I don't want to suggest that I'm not immune to the fact, or I don't want to come across like I'm immune to the fact that some of this stuff is expensive and some of the pricing decisions they've made are a bit silly, because I do understand that. But, you know, ultimately my perspective on this is that I'm a grizzly old weathered 40k veteran now who's been doing this for way too long. And yeah, I've long since accepted the fact that sometimes it's just a bit irregular in terms of its pricing, and sometimes it's just a bit misguided in terms of what they're asking for what you're getting, and you just accept it, right? I've always made the joke that Games Workshop have always kind of priced things probably about 25% inappropriate, more, you know, 25% more into the realm of inappropriate. You know, it's like, again, the 40k, the Games Workshop Warhammer World exhibition is £7.50, and I always look at that and go, that feels like really that's about £2.50 more than they should charge for that. And that's the model I've used for everything Games Workshop.
I think they've pitched it perfectly for that high end where it makes you go, ooh, it's a bit much, but here you go. And ultimately, they have done that to the point where you always go, here you go, and give them your money because you want it. Yeah. It's not so expensive. You're like, this is obscene. You can do one. I'm never buying it. Obviously, for some people, that is. But I think for the majority of people, it is expensive, but they kind of accept it and they go, oh, okay, it's not that bad. It's not great. But I think that's the thing. You need to keep your eye out for the savings and bargains like Imperium, like Indomitus, when they do come up. And they're not always that frequent, but they're more frequent than they used to be sort of back in the day. Oh, yeah. So if you're trying to do it on a budget, there are avenues, limited avenues, depending on certain armies. But they are there. You just got to kind of look out for them, grab them while they last, because they never stick around for long. Yeah.
One thing I will also say, as someone who has definitely now become a terrible hoarder of 40k related items, also try and have a real kind of perspective on whether you need some of this stuff some of the time, because I've definitely gone too far the other way. Like, you know, I'm buying stuff for the sake of buying stuff, but I'm not using nearly enough of it at the moment, and I need to address that balance as well. And that's why I'm saying that I'll be cancelling my my subscription to Imperium. Not because I don't think it's a great product. I just realized that I've got too much of this, and the idea of adding all of the stuff that's advertised in that magazine on top of all the stuff I already have is just a road to nowhere at the moment. You know, I'm the other side of the cycle. I'm currently in the process of downscaling my collection and selling off stuff that I don't need anymore. But it ebbs and flows, right? I did that once before a few years ago, and now I'm right back where I was 3-4 years ago when I had to make that decision before. It's the way it goes, right?
Cycle.
It's a never-ending cycle. It's the plight of the war gamer. You can never have enough. But there you go. I reckon that'll do, Phil. We're going to move on to the next bit of the show, which is kind of our outro rambly bit. where we're going to answer some questions or, address feedback from our fans who have, been kind enough to reach out to us on social media and offer their insights on this topic. So hopefully you'll stick around and listen to that, but we hope you've enjoyed it. And Phil, do you have any closing statements on all of the kerfuffle that has been going on G-Dubs this side of
put me on the spot. I think we sort of said it overall. It's like, yeah, it's okay. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's it kind of is what it is, and I think most people understand that. Hopefully, as you said, with some of the things around the social media side and the community posts, that they iron that out and become a bit more transparent about what they're doing sometimes, because they have been doing a lot of these sort of stealth updates on the website, and most of the time it's harmless, but with this instance it's sort of a bit of a negative one, I think.
Yeah, no, agreed. All right, guys, we're going to move on. Transitional noise. Woo! And welcome now, everyone, to that last bit of the show where we address questions and or talk about general stuff. And I suppose I'll kick it off by saying that, haven't you noticed, Phil, that now everyone's started promoting tournaments again? LGT, yes, London Grand Tournament and the Beachhead Brawl. They're all starting to be like, come on now, guys, come back to tournaments again. Woo!
Yeah, I guess there's this optimistic end date of lockdown. So people in the UK, at least, are going, let's do some tournaments. Ooh, rub our hands together.
See, it's funny because they put the LGT tickets up, and I heard off of the guys from Rapid Fire Wargaming in our little WhatsApp group that they've sold 500 tickets already to the London Grand Tournament.
Don't tell them the secret. That's a little secret thing between us and them.
Oh, is it a little secret insider bit?
Maybe.
But anyway, yeah, they were saying 500 people, right? To which me then goes, well, I was one of those 500 because I bought a ticket for the London Grand Tournament. But now I'm sort of like, maybe I won't go.
Yeah, I mean, that assumes that obviously every single lockdown restriction is lifted, because there are sort of, I guess, certain tiers, and for the majority of those, they're all sort of small scale events, and maybe the last one is, there's no cap or limit, and you can have what you want. That's very optimistic. A 500 person event, and I think a lot of people might not be super comfortable. To be fair, though, I think that 500 person event is going to be split over several days and several rooms. So 500 tickets isn't 500 people at once. For example, the Friday one that you got tickets for the doubles, so that's probably maybe 100 people.
Yeah, maybe.
And then a lot of that 500 tickets probably the weekend, the Saturday and Sunday. Yeah,
could be possible. But yeah, it's still interesting though, right? In terms of the return to the optimistic outlook towards tournaments. And don't get me wrong, I would love if that is something that is available to us later in the year. I'm obviously now the proud owner of a ticket to the London Grand Tournament because why not be optimistic? But yeah, we'll see, right? I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out, I suppose. But yeah, so that was interesting. Also, Be'lakor got announced the other day.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
That was pretty amazing.
Lovely model.
Be'lakor's always been one of my favourites. I like a bit of the old Be'lakor.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the chains, the way they dangle down like Christmas decorations, but I think they really take that off. He's
a bit tinselly, isn't he?
Yeah, with the exception of that, I love it. I love the fact that there's a Chaos Warrior or another Primaris Lieutenant on his base, and that alone looks just really cool. Might try and
I saw
the bit seller somewhere.
I saw the Elder community get a little bit funny with it because the Lieutenant has like a spirit stone on his chest.
Oh, really?
So people, so he's got like a cracked, almost like gem that looks like it resembles a spirit stone on its chest. So the community is, it's like, they didn't just steal our grav tanks, now they've got our spirit stones. But the meme had like some really elaborate kind of like Belisarius cool name for a spirit gem.
Brilliant.
Which I thought was quite fantastic. But it is cool, man. I mean, Bellacor's wicked, and obviously if he gets some really nice rules, I think that's going to obviously be fantastic. I do really hope that they get around to doing demons soon, because it feels like the demon range has had the most change with the least amount of attention in terms of rules, because they've had like loads of extra Slanesh stuff chucked at them and loads of like other bits and pieces kind of thrown into the range. And at the moment, their codex as it is doesn't really work in isolation. You need to add in the psychic awakenings and do all that sort of stuff. So they're a very complicated army to get into, because all of that.
Can I ask, is it one codex for all the kind of chaos gods as demons?
Yes. Yeah. So chaos demons is all 4 chaos gods and some of the undivided demons, which only really includes fiends now. And
Be'lakor.
Well, and Be'lakor, yeah. So Be'lakor is present within the demon codex as well, I believe. He might have been a separate data sheet for a while. Anyway, he's definitely in there in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, so it's interesting. The demon stuff needs a serious kick up the bottom. So if Be'lakor is coming into Age of Sigmar, and they've already made it very clear that there's going to be like this Age of Sigmar almost like campaign system built around him, or like at least a new army book. But yeah, I feel like that needs to potentially herald the upcoming release of
Bellacor's other name. Bellacor's other name, Harold.
Bellacor's other name, yeah, absolutely. Just like off of Neighbours, because that's the only Harold you ever think of when you think of Harold. Right?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Harold Bishop, owner of. I can't remember what Harold Bishop did for a job in Neighbours. Do you remember?
Didn't he run the cafe?
No, that was Lou. Lou ran it was called Lou's Place, wasn't it?
No. Was he vicar or honestly, I can't remember.
He was a postman when he arrived with his amnesia. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. When
he came back to Madge and he delivered her a letter.
Yeah, been wandering around, not knowing who I am.
But... It was amazing, the sort of old rubbish you used to have to watch, wasn't it, as a kid? Like the idea that we all loved Neighbours, even though none of us knew why, but we watched it religiously, even though no self-respecting child in the world today would even watch one episode of Neighbours, right?
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't hold up to Stranger Things or any other kind of thing that's related to that on a streaming service. Yeah, it doesn't.
Maybe that's our great TV show idea. Maybe we bring back Neighbours, but we add a Stranger Things twist to it.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Neighbours is still going strong, because
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But we bring back some of the original cast who are probably still in it, to be fair.
Yeah.
We get Harold and Toadfish and other characters with names. Oh, the time we would have. Wasn't there like a couple popular singer-songwriters who came out of EastEnders, Neighbours back in the day as well?
Yeah, Carly Minogue, Jason Donovan.
Carly Minogue, yes, of course.
There have been others, but they're the 2 famous ones.
There's that one that sung about being torn. Nothing left.
I believe Chris Hemsworth came from Neighbours as well.
Chris Hemsworth? I don't know who that is.
Thor.
Thor,
yeah.
Chris Hemsworth of Thor fame.
I believe so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
he was in Neighbours.
I believe so. Yeah.
My goodness.
It might have been a cameo.
Rack off.
I'm pretty sure he was on it. Right, I think that's enough. That's enough rambling for those.
Yeah, that'll do in terms of Be'lakor and his Australian heritage and what he could be bringing to the table there. I mean, he's got too much. You're right. He's got too many chains on him. But bar that, he's lovely. I prefer the arm down pose to the pointy pose in this instance. But did you even notice there were poses?
I didn't. No, I need to.
There are 2 versions of him. There's pointy and then arm down version.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's quite cool. But yeah, so he's got a spirit. He's got the Primaris Lieutenant has got a spirit stone or spirit gem, and yeah, you can make him pointy or not pointy. But he's got a sword covered in wibbly energy, and he looks cool. I can't wait to get some new Chaos Demon rules and get on that bandwagon, because I've always been a fan of Be'lakor. So, yeah, bring the Be'lakor love. But, yeah, shall we look at some of the remarks and questions that we've been asked and see if we can illuminate our listeners with information and or answers?
Yeah, for sure. We're going to start off with the old Facebook comments. I'll start off by saying once again, we tend to do a shout out on Mondays and Tuesdays as to what the topic is for the following week. So keep an eye out on Facebook and Instagram on those days if you want to join in with these community comments. The first one is from Jew Bravo. That is a name I've not heard in a long time. He says, I think we can all be common that we all have a luxurious hobby. I'm in the hobby for about 17 years and I'm fine with that. But meanwhile, the prices are getting out of hand. It's hard to understand why they sell the stuff from big boxes like Indomitus separately for such a high price. And I would not recommend you pay this. The most ridiculous thing is that they raise the prices of really old models like Imperial Guard Infantry or Lehman Russes. That makes no sense to me. To start a new Guard army or Orcs from zero is crazy expensive. And then he says, I'm working on my Red Scorpions for about 1 year now, and I used almost all secondhand models.
And it's great, isn't it, that there's such a vibrant secondhand market that people can actually, get into the hobby via that route. And I think that's definitely a way to explore this. I mean, there's so many buying/selling groups where people are looking to shift stuff. I mean, look at myself as an example, right? Like I'm looking to offload quite a lot of stuff that I've gathered over the years now. And, people like me rely on people like Mr. Bravo here in terms of picking up, my old discarded miniatures in that respect, because ultimately I don't want them anymore. So, it's great that people are out there buying. I think, we kind of labored the point during the main kind of bulk of the show, but yeah, I think we all agree that the prices are a bit loopy some of the time. But again, I still resign to the fact that it is a luxury hobby and a luxury item, so you're not necessarily needing to buy everything, but some of the time, often the pricing is really, really strange and needs to be called out as such. So yeah, totally sympathetic to your position, agree with you to a certain extent.
And he has got a point about how like the prices of old kits do just go up. Like pretty much every year there's a price hike on most models that is sort of above inflation. And so old kits cost a lot more than they did when they very first came out. And I think that's, I don't know if that's because they've got to redo over time the like the metal molds that they use for plastic injection, which are really expensive. So they've got to then up the price to make them more viable, or if it's just to factor in like they're taking up space on a warehouse and they don't sell as well. So they've got to make them a bit more expensive to get their money back from the people that do. But the downside is, like I said, some kits are quite expensive for especially for the quality of them. Like the Guard Infantry is pretty dated sculpts.
I will say that in my humble opinion, I think Games Workshop is better today at creating price parity than they have been historically. There were some famous examples of utterly absurd pricing that existed in Games Workshop of old before standardization of a number of kits and plastic sets. One of the more notorious ones, which I believe are actually still available, were the old Blood Knight kit. Like the Blood Knight kit, which was a vampire cavalry kit. I think for a while was like the most expensive kit you could buy. And it was something like each one of them was like £20 a model. Now, right now, I think they've addressed that to the extent that maybe they're like £15 a model. But in a weird way, that is mostly represented by the fact that a lot of the other miniatures of similar size and stature have kind of almost kind of leveled up to the extent that they represent a similar kind of quote value proposition. But
yeah,
I think,
so Blood Knights are £61.50. They're currently
for 5,
they're no longer available though as well.
They've gone.
For 5.
I feel like they were £100 for 5 at one point.
Wow, I don't know.
And that was like years ago. There was like they were always the one that you held up on like a pedestal as this is mad. And the funniest thing as well was they weren't even as good in old Warhammer as or they arguably weren't as good as the standard skeleton warrior cavalry that I've forgotten the name of now, but there was like some subtle differences between them. I think the Blood Knights could ignore all types of terrain or something because they were all vampire.
They kind of previewed a new knight, a new Blood Knight-esque model that was, I don't think he was more vampire. I think he was more like a skeleton but bedecked in a Blood Knight style.
Yeah, that was more in line. Yeah, that was more in line with the general kind of like skeleton warrior vibe from the old Vampire Council, range. But it wasn't a Blood Knight is vampire cavalry.
Yeah,
the other ones are something different. But yeah, and like Wraith Guard were like 10, 12 pounds a model for like a little metal figurine. So to get a squad of like 10 of them to make them a troop's choice was £100. So there were lots of like old examples of really janky pricing. So it's not like a new thing. Not that excuses it. It's just I'm just saying that it's always been janky. The thing is that I sympathize and I understand that it's hard to get into certain new armies. But again, it depends how you approach it. I don't know. I mean, when I was young and I was getting into this hobby, I never assumed that I was going to buy everything in a one-er. It all just built up over time. It was like,
I think it was a bit easier then because you had blister packs. So you're buying a couple of models for like £8, which is probably by nowadays standards still quite expensive in a kind of model for model count. But it just, piecemeal. It's basically the equivalent of buying the New Imperium magazine. But the New Imperium magazine, you'll probably get, if you're lucky, maybe 5 models. Blister pack, you'd get 2 or 3 at most of the time.
Yeah. Well, in like 96, 97, when I was getting into the hobby as a young lad, I remember I was doing a paper round and I would every week buy a Elder jet bike. And I did this for 10 weeks to get 2 5-man squads of Elder jet bikes, right? So
Commitment.
Commitment, yeah. So over the course of 10 weeks, I had completed my 10-man unit of old jet bikes. And it was really nice, actually, because I bought it. I got really good at painting them really quickly as well, because I'd sort of refined this approach that I used for them. But yeah, every week I'd buy a jet bike and I paint it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and work out the maths of what that would be in today's money, but dare I say, it would probably be more than the £30 in today's money it would cost me to buy 3 jet bikes in one box set. So again, it's difficult to say for certain. And again, I'm always conscious when we get into these, because I know some people feel like we're apologizing for GW and all the rest of it. It just genuinely is a matter of perspective. But I think for me, like I accept that this stuff is expensive and I acknowledge that. And it is frustrating when you want to try and collect a very specific type of army and it's quite expensive to do so. And it does feel unfair, I think, is the way you need to look at it. It's like, why, just because I want to collect orcs, do I have less options than someone who wants to play and start collecting Marines? Like, why do I have to have less flexibility by virtue of the army that I want to collect? Like, surely the ideal scenario is that all armies have equal opportunities to be collected and have equal deals. But at the end of the day, that's just not how it appears to work anyway from a business perspective, right, Phil?
Yeah, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like Space Marines are the #1 selling range, so they sell lots more Space Marines. So therefore, there's more people probably buying Space Marines because the range is better, it's better supported, and therefore less people are buying, Xenos and Chaos armies. So it sort of just goes round and roundabouts, basically. But I guess that's always going to be the way. Yeah, if you want to start collecting orcs, you're kind of stuck with the start collecting box set, and that's it. Maybe there's a Christmas bundle, but your choices are limited. But that's sort of the dice you've been given and that you've rolled, and if you just be committed to an orc player, like just do that. It's like same with my Krieg. It's like my range of Krieg models has only gotten smaller as I've collected them. They've never released a new model at all. I've only, discovered limited edition models that were available from Warhammer World or like an event, for example, via buying it secondhand on eBay. That range has just gotten smaller and smaller. So yeah, but pick something you love, and then it doesn't really matter. Like, you'll be passionate about it regardless. If you're going just on a pure basis of what's the cheapest thing I can buy, probably at this stage Necrons, because they're everywhere.
Get into them Necrons if you're looking for value. That's where the money's at.
Yeah. There's 2 comments with opposing views, so I thought I'd read these out as well. There's one by Sean on Facebook. If you look at the prices of similar models separately, is about right. In fact, isn't it actually a saving? And then Jack says, way overpriced and hardly worth it if you've got Indomitus or Dark Imperium.
Do you want to expand on that? Come on. It seems to be normally in these situations, you present the questions and I then go about giving answers. You answer this one this time, Phil. Come on.
Well, they're both correct. Jack says that they are overpriced. If we're talking about the honored chapter, and not worth it if you've got Indomitus or Dark Imperium. It's like, correct. If you've got Indomitus already, it's not worth buying. I think we said that pretty much in the episode. But Sean is also right. If you look at them and break each component, each model down individually, with its nearest competitor of characters being 20 quid, they are a saving. It's Schrodinger's cats. They're both correct at the exact same time. So yeah, that's a nice, easy way of answering it, I think.
Yeah, and I echo that sentiment. I think when you actually look at the prices individually, you can understand how and why they ended up where they ended up. But I think, the main concern and the main kind of complaint is more based on the idea that, Indomitus was this price, this is this price. How did we end up here? This isn't correct, I suppose. And that I understand. But yeah, a lot of us, as you've correctly said, Phil, a lot of us have bought Indomitus now. A lot of us own it. And for us, we're not so affected by this. But obviously at the same time, yeah, it's easy to acknowledge that these things are quite a lot more expensive had I just bought Indomitus.
Yeah. So if we move over to Instagram, we've got so many comments. We're not going to read them all out. But I'll read out Folkstorms. He's done a good one. He says he's not too fussed about GW prices. I'm not smart enough to know their profit margins on the pound spent versus earned, but their models get ever more amazing. I mean, even AOS, which generally ain't my style, is objectively stunning sculpts. And I don't mind paying for that. I used to scuba dive. That's expensive and it's bleeped out. And soccer shoes can cost an arm and a leg. As a collector of a Forge World army, I just don't think it's that bad. I mean, you get 10 Space Marines for way less than you pay for Corpsmen. And obviously, to clarify, if you don't already know, Folkstorm is Toke. He collects a Krieg army like I do. So that's an expensive army. Not probably the most expensive, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pricey exercise, right? And yeah, I mean, a lot of ways I do kind of mirror like Toke's perspective on some of this stuff. And again, it's why it's always difficult with this stuff, because I want to kind of be honest to how I feel about this stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to be unsympathetic to how others feel. And I think that's the thing, is like, I totally get why a lot of people, are disappointed by this, and I want that to kind of come across here. But at the same time, for me personally, I don't mind that much. But yeah, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? It's a funny old thing. But the miniatures are beautiful. Well, the range is ever increasing, and it's pretty great.
And sort of on that note, in terms of the ever getting better miniatures, we got one from Emperor Jim. Oh, hell, the Emperor.
Oh, hell, Emperor Jim.
He says, GW is expensive. It's always been expensive, but it is a hobby and a choice to buy it. I mainly think about young people wanting to get into the hobby. Unless they are really going to commit, I think they're just being priced out, especially for kits outside starter boxes. I remember being 14 or 15 in the early to mid 90s buying Epic miniatures when he had no job or pocket money. It was expensive, but not impossible. He says, I doubt young people can afford to really get into the hobby now. And if young people don't get into the hobby might die eventually.
I mean, that's a very kind of clairvoyant statement in some respects, but also an incredibly accurate one, right? Because ultimately, the hobby relies on a kind of, fresh, uptake of new players in order to keep going. And, Games Workshop sort of enjoy these different kind of stages of players and this different, amounts of people who engage with the hobby. But I think we should be under no illusions that potentially and still very realistically, the bulk of their business is probably going towards parents buying Games Workshop figures and books for their children, right? That's still going to represent a huge bulk of their income.
I would disagree. I would say their core target audience is 35, 30 plus, like sort of our age. Obviously I'm a bit older, but 30 years old and above is their core target demographic, people with a disposable income, which is why it's so expensive, which is why they've sort of priced it as it is. But they're not stupid, and they do things like these smaller starter kits, the Recruit Edition, the the magazines. They do the books for kids and stuff. That like they know that they've got to get kids in young to basically become their target demographic when they hit our age.
See, I would dispute that, and I would dispute that mainly because of the fact that it's very easy when you are that target demographic, or rather when you are that in that group, that you can get very blinkered perspectives on what you represent and what kind of value you offer, right?
Well, I guess with the visual side of community, it's like when you go to a gaming club, everyone's predominantly, or at least in the club I go to, over 18 and a bit older. You go to tournaments, that's all predominantly much older people. You do get some young people, but they're way in the minority. Obviously, going down to the local Games Workshop, you might see a lot of younger kids, especially on the weekend. But maybe they're just playing at home with their parents or with themselves or their mates, and you just don't see them. So you might be right. They might be a large portion of people buying stuff, but you just don't necessarily visually see them. And they're not engaging in the Facebook and, the Instagrams and stuff. So you don't see them there either.
Yeah, because you've got to think that majoritively speaking, like a lot of these kids are going to be playing in like school leagues, and lots of them are going to be involved in their own little clubs, and lots of them are going to just be playing with their friends, right? And, because they're not going to necessarily want to, because Games Workshop themselves don't really foster, that kind of store experience, certainly not during COVID, but, they don't want loads and loads of kids cluttering up their stores anymore, running like, Saturday games clubs and all the rest of it. I mean, they still do it, but certainly to a lesser extent than what they used to. But yeah, I do feel like still the bulk of their consumers are going to be kids, as much as it pains me to admit it, because obviously I want my hobby to be, for big, brave, sensible and, adult people. But realistically, kids is going to be the bulk of it. Because if you think about it, right, like you think about everyone that you've ever seen at these events, or you think about, like the people who engage with this, there definitely is thousands of people like us in the United Kingdom who are hardcore fans in their 30s and beyond. However, I would argue that we are vastly outnumbered by the amounts of kids that are buying the odd box of Space Marines or mucking around with it here and there. I think we're just, I think would be very naive of us to suggest that we are the core.
Well, I guess what you then need to go is, in terms of the numbers of people, do kids outnumber adults? But then if that is the case, I still think adults are the ones that are spending more money per person on a more regular basis. Like, because they're are just right. No,
it's so much speculation at this point, but yeah, I can totally I can totally get on board with what you're suggesting, because I know I spend a lot of money. I know you spend a lot of money. I know that a lot of our friends spend a lot of money, but that's because we're the sorts of people that are now in this and have gotten into the habit of doing that. Whether that on an entire UK basis represents the bulk of their income, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe it is. Maybe it is. In which case, good for them. In which case, do more to keep us happy. And we'll keep spending money, right? What's the next one, Phil?
You got one from Ethical Ice Cream. Oh, Ethical Ice Cream Chuck. Can't forget that last bit. Slightly veering off, slightly off topic, but sort of still on topic. So he goes, okay, one thing I don't understand is why Games Workshop sell their own product in their own shops for more money than third-party retailers. If you make the product, you must get the best price wholesale. I would love to buy things at my local store, but it makes no sense to support them when it's cheaper everywhere else. I just don't get it. Shrug emoji.
Could you hazard a guess why that might be, Phil?
Yeah, I think it is their markup is, well, one, to be as profitable as possible, but they have those stores to run. That is an extra cost. It's like an independent retailer has that cost split over their entire product range of other brands and other costs. Games Workshop is a part of it. I think Games Workshop's prices are expensive because they need to support the store, which brings in new customers. It brings in the footfall off the street, which if it was just an online retailer, they couldn't do. Now, every third-party retailer in the UK has to have a bricks and mortar store as well. It can't just be an online retailer, because then you could just kind of cut those costs. But I think they see it as an extra avenue. It's like they know the core of their audience buys Games Workshop from them, so let's mark it up high. If people really can't afford it or they want to go elsewhere, let's give some other retailers the option to sell it at a discounted price. And I think that's the thing. It's like they're given an RRP, they don't have to sell it at that price, and obviously won't, because they've got to compete against Games Workshop, so they will mark it down, obviously within reason, so there is a limit how far down they can go. So I think it's just another avenue of getting additional income in that they might not otherwise do.
Yeah, look, I mean, technically, there is no limit to what a retailer could resell the product from Games Workshop for. I could start a business tomorrow selling boxes of tactical marines or intercessors for 20p if I wanted to, but I would, as the retailer, carry the burden of that cost, right? So I would essentially be buying them from Games Workshop for an agreed price, which I would get through obviously negotiating with their salespeople or with their telesales people, whoever it is that you do the deals with Games Workshop as an independent stockist or as a larger scale stockist. Because you got to remember, right, these guys have sold product through larger retail chains in the UK specifically. They sold through, all sorts of specialist retailers and have sought to continue to do so where possible. So you can agree your deals, but at the end of the day, if you want to, as a retailer, sell their stuff at a loss, you're absolutely within your rights to do so. Games Workshop aren't allowed to dictate what you as a retailer want to sell the product for. It's not within the confines of like the way that this stuff works. Now, Games Workshop are unique because they are a retailer and they are a manufacturer in equal measure. So they sell their own products. But they also sell their products through other kind of retailers and other things. And a lot of those retailers decide to offer their price points based on Games Workshop's prices minus a percentage. And again, there could be other weird kind of contractual things and stuff that they're throwing into the mix that fix those prices more. But that's also very strange. And a company of the sort of size and scale of Games Workshop now would not be able to get away with doing anything untowards with regards to fixing their prices or, doing things that go against all the general trading standards that happen. But yeah, ultimately, I buy Games Workshop stock for the price that we agree. What I sell it for is no one's business but my own. Because if I want to take a bath on every single game I sell or every single product I sell through my own retail outlet, it's my business to do so. Sure, I won't have a business for very long because I won't make any money, but that's for me to do. But obviously there is a point of difference between what Games Workshop says it costs and what Games Workshop is selling it to this retailer for, that these individuals are still making profit. For Element, they say that they are discounting 15%. So maybe they're buying the stock of Games Workshop for 60% of what it would cost you or I to buy it. And then they're happy making their 25% margin and they're happy making their 25% profit. They could be making 40% profit, but they wouldn't have been able to have captured as much of the audience as they have without that discounted rate. So that's where it lands. It's, ultimately it's a point of difference, and it's the business of selling stuff. So yeah. I don't know. Do you feel like that was too much or too little of an answer?
No, I think that's about right. I think, Games Workshop has the market share in terms of its audience, so it doesn't need to discount their prices down. But what they can do is, we're selling Indomitus, let's say small scale stuff. So let's say that they can sell it. They know they can sell 1,000 boxes roughly. Eventually, they don't know how long it will take them. Just a ballpark guess. We've got 1,000 boxes. We can shift that eventually. That's not a problem. And we can just sell that on our own. We don't need anyone else. And that's the end of the story. Or if you factor in third party retailers, like we can sell 1,000 to our customers because we reckon we can do that. Plus, these independent retailers, they've each said they're going to buy 10 copies each off of us. And that's another 1,000. So it's like, why not do both? Like, that's why they offer to third party retailers, because it's just expanding their reach. Getting players that might not even necessarily know about 40k until they go into that store, because Games Workshop doesn't have, retail stores everywhere. So expanding out to these independent retailers is their way of going about it, I think. So yeah, I think that's sort of roughly why they do those things.
Yeah, I don't know if they have to do it, but it's definitely in their interest to do it. So. Yeah, and the reason people sell it cheap is because they can. And why wouldn't you? You want to sell more product. You want to make more money. If you sell, if you sell 1,000 of something and you make 20 pence off of each one of those things, right? You're still going to make more than if you sold 100 of that thing for £1. It's like, or a pound profit thing. It's just that thing where the volume becomes the thing. Admittedly, in that example I just gave, you're basically achieving the same result, but regardless of the fact that my maths was slightly off, no, was it? No, you make twice as much money when you. My maths is all over the place. It's getting late, Phil.
That's
numbers.
But yeah, it's basically third party guaranteed source of income. The burden of selling that product is on them, not Games Workshop. So it seems like a no brainer, I guess. I'll do one more. It's a long one, so prepared to strap in. It's from 2 Bits Paints. He says 9th edition starter sets are incredible value. Get started, and the combat patrols are all good too. I think because Indomitus was such good value, it makes the Royal Court and the Honoured of the Chapter look way overpriced. The Kill Zones look a tad overpriced. The Wasteland one, which is the Frontierist one he's talking about, one does look reasonable though. I'd recommend getting the big starter set or the Battlefield sets they did. If you are going for the Games Workshop terrain, so the Recruit and Command editions of 40k, the Kill Team box, he's like, Warhammer community got it wrong, and it's an expansion like Rogue Trader and Arena. It's not a new starter set. If you view it like that, it's less of a mistake. Everyone is stating. Fair point. He then says, for the models, it's not too off the expected price of the kits. Could do with another flayed one sprue to even up the forces. But the major issue I have with it is because it's a low model count box. Unlike the Rogue Trader expansion, the terrain you get with it really needs to be good to make it good value. But it just looks so crappy. Fair point. If it came with some nice 3D terrain or a zone mortalis like Dark Uprising, I'd certainly pick it up. As it is, I'm gonna play eBay, he says, until the kits come out. He then says, what do you think of Conquest Imperium, which is obviously the new magazine he's talking about? I find the Imperium side really odd for new players to start off with, but it looks like some individual issues might be a real bargain.
A lot to unpack there. A lot of stuff that we kind of covered in the show itself, right? So it kind of feel like we're going to tread over old territory here. But so to start with the opening point, the misinformation around the kill zones, we've addressed that point, right? We don't think it was a very smart decision by Games Workshop, but we're willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But we really don't want to see that happening again in the future, right? I think all of us can agree that it's not a good look for Games Workshop, right, Phil?
Yeah.
That's that one. In terms of, he went from that straight into Kill Team Nexus, right?
Yeah, talking about the terrain not being that great, and it'd be better if they did some 3D terrain like Dark Uprising.
Yeah, so again, perfectly functional for the game that they supply you, but definitely limited in its options beyond using it in Kill Team Arena or Kill Team Nexus. So it's actually quite nice when you see it in reality. I mean, it's a load of just assorted weird Necron stuff, but it's fine within the context of that game because the way they've laid out the board is it's supposedly made up of loads of like corridors that you can't see through. So when you look at it, you go, oh, there's no like three-dimensional terrain to this. It's just a few doors and a few Necron wheelie bins, as I've heard them described. And that is true at a glance, but actually the way the game is played is the floor is laid out with like lines that kind of indicate walls and corridors, and that deals with a lot of that issue. It's not nearly as tactile or inviting as if you were playing a Zone Mortalis game or a game using Zone Mortalis terrain, but it's a compromise, right? And I agree it's not great and it's not a good look, but or it doesn't look great in photos, but from my experience of having read the book now and seeing how they've tried to balance stuff and see how they've implemented it, as I said, I don't think it's awful. I just don't think it's a good option for people who want to get into Kill Team. Don't buy it if you're looking at it as a way into Kill Team.
Well, you can't because you need the rule book. So yeah, exactly. I mean, you could buy that on top, but then it's even less of a saving than it's actually more expensive than the actual Kill Team starter set.
Agreed.
I think a lot of, again, it's like the reason why some things are really good value is the kind of cross compatibility of it. It's like if it was terrain that you could play in 40k and teams that you could play in 40k, heavy intercessors, everyone wants them because they're in 40k, great. But because the terrain is pretty much unique to that game, it makes that terrain not as good value for money as the models that you would use for 40k. If the game itself and all you care about is that game and it's good, like it's a good Kill Team expansion, then, and that's all you care about, then it's great. It doesn't really matter too much. But a lot of people look at it as, how can I get bundle deal for terrain and infantry, and they don't care about the game. And historically, Games Workshop was very much of that mindset. They would just churn out kind of crap games like Gangs of Gomorrah. I mean, no offense to whoever designed it, but the assumption is those games are all a bit rubbish, and they would just bundle deals to just kind of get the models out because people are going to lap them up for 40k or Age of Sigmar or Fantasy as it was back then. I think actually the sea change was Silver Tower. So I follow James Hewitt, who's an old Games Workshop rules writer, game developer back in the day. He actually really pushed for Silver Tower to be a really good game. He was one of the people behind it. He actually really wanted, he basically said he did tons of overtime to make it a good game. And even to this day, like, the other follow-up, Blackstone Fortress and Curse City still use some of those game mechanics that he came up with because the foundations were pretty good. And that was the sea change in Games Workshop, where it wasn't just a bundle deal to sell models regardless of what the rules were. It was very much actually we can actually make these good games in their own right. Sort of the name Games Workshop, like that's kind of the core name. It was all about that. Like the original premise of Games Workshop was about creating great games, regardless of system and wherever.
I'd love to meet someone who actually played Knight Renegade, for example.
Yeah, like I'm sure someone did. They must have.
I played that Assassin Executioner Force thing. I played that.
I had it. I think I've still got it actually, but I've never played it.
I played it. Me and Richie and my wife and someone else I can't remember now played it.
Mike? Mike?
Yeah, it was possibly Mike actually. Yeah, we played it and we were like, yeah, it was all right, but it wasn't great. It was like one of those ones where you played it once and went, cool, move along. So yeah, and what was the last part?
The last question was about the new Imperium magazine. He says it thinks the Imperium side's a bit odd, especially if you're a new player, but good bargains for getting individual issues.
I mean, it's odd in the context that if you think that your Space Marine army just needs to be a Space Marine army and not have any other components of the Imperium, I think what's good about it, as the name suggests, it kind of showcases the breadth of the forces that make up the Imperium of Man. And I think it's good that they've, not just given you a Space Marine army, because it shows some of the diversity of the range and what's there. The Mechanica stuff they're giving you is really cool. The breaches and all that stuff. And obviously the Sisters stuff is really great to see as well. So, yeah, I mean, I will admit it's a strange kind of selection in some respects, but that's just the Imperium for you, right? I mean, I didn't see anything in there that was especially egregious. I wasn't like, ooh.
I think it's going to have more reach because people who play those factions are going to pick up those specific issues. They're not necessarily going to subscribe, and as a subscriber, maybe it's a bit odd. But then your choice is either just a Space Marine army or a Space Marine army plus some other stuff, and either way, you get your Necron army as well.
Is there any Firstborn in there?
I believe so, but I'm just trying to think what it would be.
I don't think there is any. I think it's all Primaris.
The original one had a mixture of both. And had things,
but I think this one is literally just Primaris.
Yeah, that would make more sense. I haven't.
Yeah, it would do.
Yeah.
I mean, again, continuing on the narrative trend that Firstborn are being slowly ushered out into the woodshed, aren't they?
Well, I think it's more that this is just new kits, so it's like it would make sense that it wouldn't have any of them in it. And I think when Conquest first came out, people were like, or even I was like, why don't they do this for all the armies, or why don't they include all the armies in there? So I think this one having a lot more Imperium armies, at least a step in the right direction. They've included the other armies via the premium one, and it's like, I guess they could have gutted the Necron portion and shoehorned in a bunch of the other races in there. So if you want to play 40k, you'll get a bit of everything, but that sort of is good for people that want to get individual issues, but maybe less so as a subscriber, because you're going to have a bunch of really small armies. But yeah, I'm definitely going to pick up Sisters, AdMech, just for like little conversion projects, like the odd unit here and there. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. I think together it still makes a pretty cohesive force. It's obviously not as good as if it was a fully optimized Marine list or a fully optimized Sisters list or whatever. But yeah, I've got no issue with that. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I would have liked to have seen maybe some Custodes chucked in, because if you're going to put Gilliman in, I feel like you should have some Custodes rolling out with him to, to kind of be by his side and look after him and so on, as is their want these days. But
well, there's no guard in there. It's like they are the way of the dodo.
I don't think the guard are going the way of the dodo. I just don't necessarily feel like they should be marching in step with Marines and Sisters and even the Mechanicus to a certain extent. They're a very specific part of the Imperium, aren't they?
I think they're all up there as part of the Imperium. And historically, I think it was always Guard and Space Marines. But I think obviously I get why they're not in there, because they're not new sculpts. They're all old. It's like the Sisters are all brand new, but AdMech barely a few years old. And all the Space Marine stuff is equally either brand new or a couple of years old. So you want to showcase your best stuff. So of course it's going to have all of that. So yeah, it's sort of a bit sad, but I totally get why. But the shift now is when you look at the Imperium, and even as I said it before with the core rulebook, is very much Space Marines, Sisters. Then it was Inquisition actually in terms of the order of the 3 pillars. And then later on, it's like, there's Guard, there's AdMech, there's Knights, there's those other things. But Sisters and Marines are like their lead faction for 9th edition. It was what was in the trailer. Guardsmen had a little token gesture being in the background.
Yeah. That all makes sense, man. Awesome. All right. I reckon that'll do, Phil. That seems like a healthy amount of content for yet another week.
Far too much. Can you keep
almost? I know, right? I know. It's an absolute mystery. But guys, as always, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for listening, downloading, engaging with us here at the Lookout Surf 40K podcast. We really appreciate it. And, obviously continue to, listen and share with your friends and tell them how wonderful it is to be listening to the Lookout Surf 40K podcast, because we are by far and away the best podcast in the 40K universe. Right, Phil?
One would hope. Have you got a little tease for the ladies and gentlemen as to what we might be doing next week?
No idea, mate. It's a complete mystery to me. We'll probably figure it out during the week, as it were. But some guy was asking me the other day about something, but I've completely forgotten what it is now. I think it was like, one guy was asking me, why don't we do more content about Tau specifically, which was like, oh yeah, sorry about that. And then there were some other conversations about, comparing and contrasting 8th/9th edition with like 6th and 7th, because he liked the fact that we that a lot. I'm not sure there's a whole episode in that, but maybe there is. I mean, maybe we could do with doing a short one for a change, but I think the problem is we're trying to express or explain the differences between 6th and 7th to 8th and 9th is you have to essentially do an entire kind of like history lesson on what the game was, because
got to talk about to hit into wounds tables and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's a totally 6th and 7th edition in a nutshell were, as rule set, as a game, good but not perfect, but certainly better than they're remembered. But the problem isn't the core rules, it's the whole allies system and the codexes. That's
formations as well. Formations.
Yeah, formations, codexes, special detachments, and the way the allies matrices worked. It was so ridiculous, the stuff you could get away with in that edition, and that is why it failed.
Again, to be brief, like Horus Heresy is built on 7th edition. It works. People still play it. The system actually there is probably better than it was in 40k, but the base rules do work. A bit more complicated, but I think also refined in a way. And
I would argue they're potentially less complicated in some ways, but they're more.
Yeah, less complicated than the 40k version of its time, but more complicated than 8th edition and 9th edition.
Mechanically, but not necessarily overall. I think it's easier for you to play Horus Heresy given the sorts of rules that are in it. I think the layers of rules in 8th and 9th. I think the thing is about if you think about 8th and 9th. 8th is a system that at its core is based off of the... This is clearly a whole episode. We'll get into it. We'll do it. Whatever.
A tease.
Maybe. There you go. It's clearly an episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.